this side of the House denies that the American dream has in any way been helped by this undoubted inequality and suffering of the Negro. We maintain that, in fact, it has hindered the American dream. And if there had been equality, if there had been true freedom of opportunity, the American dream would be very much more advanced than it is now. If the American dream has made any progress, and I think it has been made in spite of the suffering and inequality of the American Negro, and not because of it. Now, it is also implied from this motion that the American dream is encouraging and worsening the suffering of the American Negro. This is emphatically not the case. The American dream, the American economic prosperity and respect for civil liberties, has been the main factor in bringing about the undoubted improvement in race relations in America in the last 20 years. And Professor Arnold Rose, who is the author of The Negro in America...
This is supposed to be your friend. Now, regardless, okay, you're right, I ain't shit, I don't know you. But this dude does know you. This is supposed to be your people. If you treat your own people like that, God, who else do you treat like that? But you have no empathy, clearly, and you have no sense of human emotion, as Andre already said, to say, you know what, this is wrong. What I'm doing is wrong.
Shit. Let me know when you're done fucking crying.
All right, wrong, you find this acceptable.
Which is perhaps the definitive work on the subject. Who is also a contributor to what was called a freedom pamphlet. So I should imagine that if he has any bias at all, it is in favor of the Negro. He said that this improvement in race relations will be seen in years to come as remarkably quick. And he has put it down to three...
You can call me, hey, you can call me whatever the fuck you want. I don't give a fuck what you call me. What I say is, in my private time, with my private friends, I make jokes that I wouldn't make publicly. That's it. And that's all the fuck I have to say to you. I don't have to say fuck all else to you. That's all I gotta say. You have to tell me why you think you have a right to come into my private conversation when you're not there, and tell me how the fuck I'm allowed to talk.
Do you go to Twitch cons or things like that?
Again, you ain't got shit to say. Yeah, I'm at fucking Twitch con. I'm going to fucking Amsterdam. What are you gonna fucking do, gangster? Come on, dude.
Main causes: increased industrialization and technical advance, the increased social mobility of the American people, and the economic prosperity. And I would put it to this House that industrialization and economic prosperity are two of the main ingredients of the American dream. And at the same time, again, I do not want to say that the Negro in America is treated fairly, but at the same time, the average per capita income of Negroes in America is exactly the same as the average per capita income of people in Great Britain.
Get out of here with that.
Nah.
Get out of here with that fucking bullshit.
This is what happens when you don't leave the house.
When I don't leave the house, dude, I've been to so many more fucking...
Alright, hold on. I'm gonna cut you off right there. Irrelevant. I know you're sitting in here in the corner, fucking seething at the mouth. What do you want to add to this conversation? Irrelevant.
I guess Cole James Cash is getting twisted over the fact that Destiny is white and approves of people saying it in private. So I guess, yes. I mean, I'm fine with people saying it in private. What you got to say? I'm black.
I found that absolutely amazing, and I understand that some of you do as well. So I have got the reference here from the United States News and World Report of July the 22nd, 1963, in which it points out, this will have to be the last interruption I take, as time is running short.
Mr. President, on a point of information, is the Speaker talking of real income or money income?
Yeah, I'm talking of money. I'm talking of money income. I would not wish to disguise that. I would also say that in terms of this, there are only 5 countries in the world where the income is higher than that of the American Negro, and they do not include countries like West Germany.
More time with your own people if you find that to be acceptable.
That is so insulting to tell somebody they're not black enough to have an opinion. What the fuck, dude?
I don't know if you're hearing the difference, my friends. Hello and welcome, by the way. Hello and welcome. I'm aronmsound. And today's topic is a discussion, an observation about the language being used in the discourse at large. And I want us all to take into consideration what's important here in getting along. Because that's the real issue, is that we've been taking the language for granted. And some people have been taking advantage of that in itself. Because they know that nihilism is winning the day. And you know what, folks? With 10 seconds on the dial, I don't think we have time for that bullshit. And I think you know as well as I do what time it is. It's time to look up.
And France and Japan. Now, there are in America 35 Negro millionaires. There are Negro 6,000 doctors and so on. Now, I do not, by saying...
The problem is, I know that you'd like to think that, but the problem is, literally, every single study that I've looked at that looks at this scenario, like there was that study, and there's also this book, Social Dominance by Jim Stadius and Felicia Prado. There's this study.
I merely wish to try and convey a more realistic and objective account of the situation of the Negro.
Hello and welcome everybody, I'm aronmsound, and this is the show known as Look Up the Remix, where I interject myself into a conversation that nobody asked me to be a part of. And today I'm starting a new series where I'm going to start reviewing the historic debates and language in those debates and compare it to what we see now. And compare it to important moments in those modern debates that folks would wish were historical moments, when in actuality they are the debased moments, I would argue, that take away from the historical greatness of many of these moments that I'm going to share. Specifically today, Baldwin v. Buckley. Now, what is important about Baldwin v. Buckley in the Sanford Club? Well, the Sanford Club is where the original laws and rules of debate were had. I believe it's Oxford, but this is Cambridge. And Cambridge being the brother or sister school to Yale, of course they reached to William F. Buckley. And if you're not familiar with William F. Buckley, he is the quintessential character that we would call conservative now. And in fact, he really was one of the formative actors and shakers in the conservative movement versus James Baldwin. Now, James Baldwin was one of the great activist writers of the civil rights movement. And he was friends with Martin Luther King and knew Malcolm X and took part in the marches. So, what we have here is formative historical figures who had agendas, personal interests, and a high level of intellectual education. And welcome to everybody, by the way. Today, I'm going to share with you, mostly untouched. I'm not going to interject too much, except for when there's pieces of video that compare, or where the language of one interaction proves that the other is not just faulty, but minimal and, debasing, I would say, even in my opinion. And I would say that a lot of these modern debates aren't debates at all. They're just dogpile arguments. They're just folks who don't know how to actually have an interpersonal conversation. They prove themselves time and time again. And what they really do is just scream and act in catharsis. In other words, they just get out all their pent-up bullshit. They don't actually engage in moving the conversation or taking part in that conversation. And I'm going to show you the difference. Because what we're going to watch is one of the most historic modern debates, and it's not a regular debate. And hello, Emily. Hello and welcome. I'm so glad you could join me today. No horns, no blasts, no call-in. Today, we're going to look at the history, and we're going to compare the language, and we're going to compare the behaviors between these folks. And so glad you could make it, by the way. And to the lurkers, you're more than welcome to take part or not. There is no call-in. I will warn you that N-bombs and the word Negro will be thrown around liberally today in the videos. And so if you're sensitive to that, be aware that's coming. But you should know that there is literally no place in modern locution for those things. There just isn't. Unless it's literally a locution between two people that resemble that. Now, for instance, I can use the cake word looking at myself in the mirror, but it's just not advised to be using language outdoors or to be sharing it or even to say that you use it in private, because it suggests, it intimates, it tells everyone who's got a rational mind, who listens to what's being said, who engages with what's being said, that you may very well lean towards racism or bigotry, or at least be allowing of it in your own sense of behavior. That's just how it is. Or let's just call it bias. I think that's the easy way to say it, because that's how I tend to test myself and others. Well, the bias in their language. Well, my friends, we're going to look at the bias and the behaviors and comparative. And when I say comparative, I mean we're going to Baldwin and Buckley. And let's not waste any more time, shall we? Good luck, y'all! Yeah! Don't forget to like and subscribe, by the way, if you like what you're seeing. If you like the conversation, you want to see me keep going, and you don't want me suppressed by the algorithm, because there's definitely some folks up in the algorithm computing controls that don't want you to see hedonistic, happy, positive-minded, better solution-oriented. They don't want you to find those things. They want you to find all the negative stuff first, because that's what they're pressing. You can just go to the homepage. You can get rid of, go open up a couple altars. Just let the homepage propagate itself. You'll see. You're going to be fed as much negative input as possible. Why? Because it sells products, my friends. And it decreases the ability of the conversation to be had between neighbors. Fear state. Selling a fear state. Well, this is the premise of my show. Reaching out my hand, and saying, by the way, there's this really incredible, really horrifying complex called the obelisk. And the obelisk is a physical structure we see in every major city and every major country in the world, and it represents power. It represents the power structure. It represents how most people sit in the funnel underneath the control structure up at top, which isn't even connected to the rest of the funnel. So when I reach my hand out to you and I say look up, what I mean is pay attention to the fucking shit around you. Pay attention to the degradation of simple meanings. Pay attention to the things that would have you pull the wool right over your own eyes. Because I give a damn about you. Wherever you are, however you are, whoever you are, I give a damn. Humanity, being human, comes first. And that includes empathy. And that's what we're going to observe today. Language of empathy in order to sway, to move, to turn a dial. It's very important. It's how we get the world to recognize things that are important about our speech, about our thought, about our language. Now, so many people today seem so involved with limiting the amount of language used to describe anything, and that in itself is a degradation. And I would urge you to allow your brain to work on a larger platform than just the ADHD pills you might have had shoved down your throat by your friends, your family, or your doctors. Get away from that. It's shortening your attention span. Same as the phone. Put the phone down for the most period of the day. You go ahead and watch this on TV. Because you can. Because it's available. Because it's easy. All right? And when I say this, I don't mean, you need to be paying attention. No, I mean stop using your phone as a social, suppository. As something that you stick up your ass so that you can shit. How's that? You want me to say it another way? Stop putting your thumb in your mouth. Because we're losing the language. We're losing the intellectualism. We're losing so much about ourselves, about humanism. And all of this is old footage. But it all applies to today. Right now. Right here. In the whole Western civilized world, we have lost the ability to listen to people in their totality and hear what they mean. Not just what they mean, but where they're coming from their humanity. And we are allowing people to disassociate their spiritual selves, their personal selves, their internal selves from the topics that they push, as if the person and the topic aren't actually intrinsically involved. So much so that false association equivalency, is a common matter that people don't know if you're real or you're not. And that's a problem, because as soon as we don't know whether people are real or not, and you can't just assume that someone beyond the screen is giving you a show, that there's a certain edge of performative capability there, as soon as somebody puts it out in the world that that's not what's going on, yet it is, well then, nothing they say can be taken at face value. Essentially, in the terms of these people now, it's bad faith. It's not just bad faith. I'm going to call it lying. I'm going to call it lying by omission. I'm going to call it behaving in an untrustworthy fashion, in an unreliable fashion, in a way that you can't trust this person. It's just that simple. You can't trust this person. It's just that simple. No, I said it twice. And, the reason I'm got a groove today like this, and welcome all to all of you, The reason I got this groove today like this is because I believe the primordial angst, the groove, the engagement between us is in this heartbeat of similarity and empathy and listening. But most important of all of it is engagement. And that's what we're going to see. Enough chow! You know, I just wanted to do that one more time. And I think the dance was a little big right now, right? Hey, and knock shy yourself. Thank you. Good golly. So I know that the language may be extensive. And I'll stop. If you have any questions, just let me know. Because some of the language here, both on the Buckley side and the Baldwin side, is lugubrious. It's educated. It's intellectual. It's very deep and poetic, which I would prefer personally. I think we should all prefer it personally because it gives each and every one of us the ability to extend our reasoning and hear things for the beauty that they are or are not. And you're going to actually see that very distinctly in what is one of the most impressive interlocutions possibly in modern history. Ladies and gentlemen, Hobos and Tramps, I give you Baldwin. Baldwin versus Buckley.
The following program is from NET, the National Educational Television Network.
Debate. James Baldwin versus William Buckley.
So you know, the entire environment
has
is
the American
very
dream been achieved at the expense of the American Negro?
Organized.
This debate was held recently at the Cambridge Union, Cambridge University, England, and was recorded for use by
the way, when you hear me
NET.
say Sanford or Stanford rules,
the debating hall of the Cambridge Union.
This is what
Hundreds
I'm
of
referring to.
undergraduates and myself waiting for what could prove one of the most exciting debates in the whole 150 years of the Union history. I don't think I've ever seen the Union so well attended. There are undergraduates everywhere. They're on the benches, they're on the floor, they're in the galleries, and there are a lot more outside clamoring to get in. Well, the motion that has drawn this huge crowd tonight is this, that the American dream has been achieved at the expense of the American Negro. The debate will open with 2 undergraduate speakers, one from each side. And then we shall have the first distinguished guest, Mr. James Baldwin, the well-known American novelist who's achieved a worldwide fame with his novel, Another Country.
Which I highly suggest,
will be Mr.
if
William
you're interested
Buckley,
in these topics about what the mindset
very well
was
known as a conservative
in the 1960s
in the United States. I'm the
about
conservative in the American
interpersonal
sense,
relations
author of a book
and
called Up from Liberalism,
interracial
and
relations,
editor
James
of
Baldwin's
the National
book is
Review, one of the
excellent.
earliest supporters
He has
of
many
Senator
of them,
Goldwater.
that one in particular.
Well, this is the setting of the debate, and at any moment now, the President will be leading in his officers and his distinguished guests. He'll take his chair, and the debate will begin.
The motion before the House tonight is the American dream is at the expense of the American Negro. The proposer, Mr. David Haycock of Pembroke College, and our opposer, Mr. Jeremy Burford of Emmanuel College. Mr. James Baldwin will speak third. Mr. William F. Buckley Jr. will speak fourth. Mr. Haycock is the ear of the House.
And this is the organization and the respect between parties that I'm just displaying to start with. And I want to compare this real quickly.
Cash is getting twisted over the fact that Destiny is white and approves of people saying it in private. So I guess,
Yes.
I mean, I'm fine with people saying it in private. What you got to say? I'm black. I don't know if you know.
I think
A lot
that
of
you need to
people
spend
do.
more time with your own people if you find that to be acceptable.
That is so insulting to tell somebody they're not black enough to like have an opinion. What the fuck?
Respect, my friends, makes all the difference in a conversation.
Mr. President, sir, it is the custom of the House for the first speaker in any debate to extend a formal welcome to any visitors to the House. I can honestly say, however, that it is a very great honor to be able to welcome to the House this evening Mr. William Buckley and Mr. James Baldwin. Mr. William Buckley has the reputation
Extension
of
to both
possibly
parties,
being the most articulate
that respect.
conservative in the United States of America. He was a graduate of Yale, and he first gained a reputation for himself by publishing a book entitled God and Man and Yale.
That's funny. God and Man and Yale. He wrote a book.
And this has included Norman
Yeah,
Mailer,
skull and bones.
Kenneth Tynan, Mary McCarthy, and Fidel Castro, none of whom have come out of their confrontations unscathed.
That's true. He debated Castro.
At present, his principal occupation is editing a right-wing newspaper in the United States entitled The National Review. Mr. James Baldwin is hardly in need of introduction. His reputation, both as a novelist and as an advocate of civil rights, is international. His third novel, Another Country, has been published as a paperback in England today. Mr. Baldwin and Mr.
That was a
Buckley
big
are
deal
both
back
very
then.
welcome
If you're,
to the House this evening.
if you got printed as paperback, and yeah, I'm showing bias. That's right.
Imagine, Mr. President, a society which above all values freedom and equality. A society in which artificial barriers to fulfillment and achievement are unheard of. A society in which a man may begin his life as a rail splitter and end it as president.
Imagine.
A society in which all men are free in every sense of the word. Free to live where they choose, free to work where they choose. Equal in the eyes of the law and every public authority, and equal in the eyes of their fellows. A society, in fact, in which intolerance and prejudice are meaningless terms.
Meaningless terms.
Miss Cash is getting twisted over the fact that Destiny is white and approves of people saying it in private. So I guess,
Yes.
I mean, I'm fine with people saying it in private. What you got to say? I'm black. I don't know if you know.
I think that you need to spend more time with your own people if you find that to be acceptable.
That is so insulting to tell.
Imagine, however, Mr. President, that a condition of this utopia has been the persistent and quite deliberate exploitation of 1/9 of its inhabitants. That 1 man in 9 has been
An
denied those
exploitation
rights
of
which the
1/9
rest of that society takes for
of its
granted.
inhabitants.
That 1 man in 9 does not have the chance for fulfillment or
The
realization
same
of his
concept
innate potentiality.
that we are actually
That 1 man
talking
in
about
9 cannot
right
promise
now.
his children a secure future and unlimited
Literally
opportunity.
nothing, or
Imagine
almost
this, Mr.
nothing,
President, and you
has
have
changed.
what is, in my opinion, the bitter reality of
Rhodes
the
Music,
American
welcome,
dream.
and hello to you.
A
Thank
few
you for
weeks
being
ago,
here.
Martin Luther King had to hold a non-violent demonstration in Selma, Alabama, in his drive to register Negro voters. By the end of the week of his demonstrations, he was able to write quite accurately in a national fundraising letter from Selma, Alabama jail, "There are more Negroes in prison with me than there are on the voting rolls." When King wrote that letter,
And we literally live in a time where
335 out of 32,700
that is near to truth
Negroes
as well.
in Dallas
Still,
had the vote.
this is
1%
1963.
of the Dallas population. After a mass march to the
60
courthouse,
years earlier
237
than now.
Negroes, King among them, were
60
arrested.
years
The
ago.
following day, 470 children who had deserted their classrooms to protest against King's arrest were charged with juvenile delinquency. 36 adults on the same day were
And
charged with contempt
that
of
hasn't
court
changed either,
for
has it?
picketing the courthouse while State Circuit Court was in session. On the following day, 111 people were arrested on the same charge, despite their claim that they merely wanted to see the voting registrar. 400 students were arrested and taken to the army.
Now, I want to point out, before he gets a little further into this, that this person, along with everybody else you'll hear today, isn't just talking. They were engaging with the subject. They're taking their time. They're expressing it by presenting a premise, then anecdotal, personal anecdotal, subjective, objective reasoning, and then a supportive logic and or fact. Then summary. No rush, because you can't make a complex point with a single sentence. Let's just start there. And that whole idea that somehow
If it does, why are you okay with it?
I just explained to you
that
that
somehow you can sum it all up in one
Why are you
sentence.
okay with it, but not edgy jokes?
Why am I? No, that's not. Oh my god, dude! It's so hard to have a
Is
conversation with you if you're not going to listen.
a fallacy.
Okay.
I didn't say. I did.
You've
not
got to be
say
able to engage
that,
with the actual
edgy
topic,
jokes
not
are
the one that you
okay.
want to talk
I
about.
said that the N-word as
That
a
makes a
slur
big,
between
giant
people,
difference when it comes to
in
having
a polite company that is non-mixed company is not okay because it then reinforces
an engaged
the beliefs of
conversation.
the dominant class,
A conversation
such people
that goes
can end up
back and
taking it as
forth and not
insubordinate.
just in one direction.
Do I have to deal with the idea that I have to somehow intellectualize, well, I should be able to use the N-word for this reason, and then we have to have a discussion about it? You want me
there's
to give you these great
no
points
real discussion.
that
Hello,
I'm
Lita, and
only giving
welcome.
out
Hi,
on
so
behalf
glad
of
you could be
these
here.
points, But he cites them. He uses
I'm making a
cited
comparative
studies.
today, by the way.
That's not
And
good
hello
enough. So
to
for
those of
me,
you that don't know what you're watching.
not good
To
enough,
the
but that's
modern
not
language
some
used
of
in
y'all.
debate is
So for
comparative
me,
to
I'm
the
just like,
respectful
alright, hold on,
language
I'm gonna cut you off right
of
there, bro.
interpersonal
So
and
me
personal
being
and
being a proud black Latino that I am,
intellectual
I'm not
debate.
with the bullshit, and I'm just telling you straight up, this is bullshit, and I just wanted Destiny to solidify.
Alright, bro, hey, if it's bullshit, then why the fuck did when I invited you on this
The
show?
moderator
Hey, bro, do I gotta
is
mute you,
also
bro? Holy
now taking part in the
Bounce
debate
fuck out,
and
dude.
being
Get the fuck
ungracious.
out already, dude. Just get out.
This is modern
You didn't add
debate.
anything to the-
Now, this is some time ago.
Hold on. Wait, everything that I cited,
But-
in that everything I said to you in that conversation, and everything that I'm saying now is backed up by hard evidence. And what you all are saying is backed
That's
up by
the
how you
important
feel about
portion. Everything he's saying is backed up by hard evidence, and what they're saying is their feelings. So, what's important about noting that? When you have a discussion about important topics, you don't really, it's not advised. I was about to say you don't get to, but you shouldn't. It's not advised to skew whenever you like to a backflip of feeling. Unless that's where you're arguing from, then that's fine. And then you should say that. face value. But when you play with the topic as if it's yours and a toy to evade or engage, if you choose to engage it, you're being bad faith. That's actual bad faith in context of a communication, intrapersonally, or debate, or argument, or anything, because debate is not argument. If you think it's argument, then you've confused two things. Debate has rules: premise, fact, summary, and statement. All right, that's where we're going to start today. And Poo Poo Sauce Abogande, hey! I cannot say your name without the effect. It's 2023. You can say whatever you want. Sticks and stones may hurt my bones, but words will never hurt me. Now, that I do agree with. You can say whatever you want. But what I'm pointing out here is the graciousness and the difference in intellectual conversation. We can be out on the street and you and I can fuck around with language all fucking day long. I'm fine with that. It's not appreciated by some. Understood. That's the freedom. Now, these lines get blurred by those folks who would say there's no semblance of associating. It's like reverse false association equivalency, when it's actual association equivalency, and they don't work. It doesn't work that way. So if you're saying the N-bomb in private, yeah, you're actually racist because you're bigoted and you have to keep it private. If you say it out in public, just the same, because you have to use a word that we know to be bigoted. All right? If you're using it amongst your own folks, that's different. That's called a locution. And if you don't know the difference, then you may be obfuscating it for yourself, pulling the wool over your own eyes, or just being an ass. But you make that call for yourself. Or the people around you will. That's normally what happens. I mean, that's really, truly what happens in real life, is you try to use that language amongst mixed company, and there's a quote coming up that, but I'm saving that. You try to use that amongst mixed company, you might find out that when they find out when you use it privately, you're still going to get shit publicly. Why? Because it's worse when you're using it privately. Actually, it's worse. It's admission that you don't even, you're a coward to your own behaviors. Anyhow, I don't want to drag us down, because what's really important here is Baldwin versus Buckley. Because this shit's amazing.
The following day, the demonstration spread to Marion, Alabama. In Marion, Negroes outnumber whites by 11,500 to 6,000 people.
It's about
and
sensitivity.
Only 300 are registered to vote.
It's about the ability to have cogent,
anxious to test the
reasonable comprehension,
of the civil
putting things together.
They entered a drug
1
store,
+ 1 = 2, and not whatever the fuck you wanted or what somebody tells you it
and
should
were told that hamburgers had risen to $5 each. After the arrest of 15 Negroes,
salt and the Coke, $5
700
hamburgers.
Negroes boycotted their classes next day.
Keeping things out of reach, keeping things out of your association, keeping things just out of your arm's length. Why do I say this? Because oftentimes these discussions that we hear in the modern day, they do this with mental backflips. They do this with the denial of associations. I keep wanting to go to these, but I have so few of these real solid clips that associated. I don't want to play them over and over again, but goodness, agenda over engagement.
Why are you okay with it?
I just explained to you that it works that way for race play too. I just
okay, but why are you okay with it, but not edgy jokes?
Why am I? No, that's not. Oh my god, dude! It's so hard to have a conversation with you if you're not going to listen.
Engagement.
Okay. I did not say.
Backflips in logic have become so common that the engagement can't even happen. Exactly. Poo poo sauce. 2 + 2 = 4. Sorry. Am I insulting someone? Anyhow, I agree. Yes, exactly. That's the logic. It's whatever, for whatever purpose, which is, I'm sorry, that's untrustworthy. That becomes bad faith if you want to use those terms, but that's just some fucking cult logic language. I am trying to deprogram that out of everybody's language, by the way, by using these other alternatives and by expressing this today. And also by sharing this greater debate. And I'm going to let it go once we get into Baldwin and Buckley, but I'm starting us with the rules, the premise, the way these things have always and still do work in cogent thinking, in comprehensive society, in society where intellectualism and empathy matter more than making your point, than winning a debate that is an argument and not a debate. Because you don't actually win an argument, by the way. Everybody loses. That's the point of an argument. Everybody's going to lose. Discussion is debate. Debate can be discussion, but discussion isn't always debate. Does that make sense? Anyways, if it doesn't, I'm sorry. I can help explain it further, but it's just wasting our time. Sorry. And that's me being ungracious. Because I just want to keep moving. Yeah, my big complaint about myself when I watch my own videos is that I don't keep fucking moving. So, and me going side to side does not count.
There they sang civil rights songs until they were warned by a state trooper that they would be arrested if they.
You know, this guy has got some poetry, fancy art,
and of course all 700.
And a great cognac somewhere.
American
given to him by his dad.
It is fit to use Negro labor. It has felt fit to use the blood of the Negro in 2 world wars. It has felt fit to listen to his music. It has felt fit to laugh at his jokes. And yet, as far as I'm concerned, it has never felt fit to give the American Negro a fair deal. And for this reason, Mr. President, I would beg leave to propose the motion that the American dream is at the expense of the American Negro.
And that is a solid argument that you could not get away with right now. Why? Because it took him 5.5 minutes to present the argument, the premising, the anecdote, the facts, and then the summary. Yeah, you can get away with that now because everybody wants you to sum it up in 5 seconds. Well, that's not how this fucking thinking thing works. The whole cogency issue. Oh boy. Yes, indeed. Oh boy. Yeah. The rush to conclusion to seem like you're the fastest, quickest motherfucker. That may be cool when you're playing Call of Duty. That may be okay when you're trying to pick up them folks on Roblox. Excuse me. But in the real fucking world, where things matter, where the words and associations and behaviors matter, folks, this is all just falderall and bullshit, except for the fact that clear communication is the only thing we have as a species to get each other to understand, to be empathetic, to be cooperative, to work together. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. But then you make yourself that person outside of the sphere. You become the gamma. You don't get to claim alpha because you body slam somebody with an idiocy. That's called, very simply, cult-like mentality, fascism in behavior. Sorry. Dialectics are religious folks who don't know that they're in a cult. And that cult is language. Which is why I share this shit. Because it's important. We're missing a whole portion of our humanism, our humanity, our intellectualism, our ability to be fucking incredible, poetic, beautiful in our statements at this point. But instead, there's a fascism akin to limiting thought, like 1984 going on. Use all the wrong things, use the wrong logic, add up the wrong way, and you know what? I'm going to pat you on the back because you got all your negative attention out. Congratulations! Yeah, no, yeah, no. It's intolerable, it's insufferable, and I'm actually more about public shame on it because it has become such a feature of everyday life, of dealing on the internet, of dealing in actual life. I mean, I keep thinking about the fact that I had a roommate that I didn't even know was living out the Destiny lifestyle with piles of fucking, oh my God. It was like living with a 14-year-old who demanded that they be allowed to live like a 14-year-old. What I didn't know about all that behavior, and this is where my personal anecdote comes in, is that, because I already made my premise. You catching up? The Azure spheres still exist here, folks. I'm not going to go away from that. I'm never going to go away from the Azure spheres. We are capitulating to the loss of engagement. And the example I'm making is 60 years ago. Just 60 years ago! This ain't that fucking long. When you're my age, you're going to realize 60 years, that ain't that fucking long ago. My brother's born, one of my brothers was born in this year. Ain't that fucking long ago? Pot smoking, long hair, curly. Ain't that fucking long ago? So let's get it together, okay? Let's figure it out. If somebody actually makes a cogent speech or they make a comprehensive statement, they're not schizo. That is the way folks undermine our ability to communicate, to take away the prose, to take away the beauty, to take away the poetry and the jazz that makes our language, that makes humanity, that makes interpersonal communication, that makes proper debate really fucking amazing and beautiful for humanity and gets us to turn the dial somewhere. And the fascism, the dialectic that causes the fascism, ignores the jazz as danger, omits it through a sense of, lies to the self. That doesn't exist. That's bad because I don't like it. And as long as we're in a tribe all together being shitty, that's the only thing that matters. And frankly, that's how you get a whole world of the left side giving way to authoritarianism because they're too lazy to fucking think, and it's too bothersome to go beyond just a couple minutes of listening, and the other side angry that they have to listen at all. So they want to change the language and turn feelings into feefees. Turning awkward and embarrassment into cringe. Slowly replacing the language into simplified formats that then no longer mean what they mean. Because you too can say the N-bomb in private, because Destiny does, right? But what that does is dislocates, it disassociates, it basically takes away from where we move towards with the dial with the poetry of jazz. And now, debased, non-functional, illiterate, and nonsensible, incomprehensible logic is used to replace that, because there was a vacuum. And lonely people, they'll seek out whatever they can. People who want to be included, people that don't know any better, people that think that, well, history before them didn't exist. I think we're starting to see that. And this is why I'm sharing these debates, because I have a whole list of them lined up, and they include feminism, they include religion, they include modern politics, they include philosophy. And if you don't know where these things came from, or these conversations came from, or that they haven't fucking changed, that we're still having these same fucking conversations, but in less literate, less intellectual motherfucking fashions. If you don't know that, then maybe you're part of the revisionism, or maybe you just believe in it. It's, it could be a lot of things. Maybe you just, that's what you're told and you didn't know. Maybe nobody shared this shit with you. Maybe you just never looked. Maybe YouTube is hiding it from you, because I've also found that too. Like, you got to search this shit out. I couldn't believe I had to search this out. I've known about, this should be on PBS all the time. Why? Why isn't it out there now, folks? Oh, I think we know why it's not out there all the time. I think there's people that have their fingers on the algorithm. Oh, wait, I don't just think, I know. I've done a lot of research, and I will be doing an expose on that in the coming weeks once I have a couple more pieces. But I can assure you that there are fingers on the scales pushing things around. Whether it be the bots, or the allowance of the bots, and I'm not talking about humans, I'm talking about, 5 viewers. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Trying. And all I can do is share. All I can do is make a comparison and show you what I see for myself. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, fuck. I make mistakes too. But that's the thing is, every one of these people, intellectually, tells you right away they are fallible. But seeing it and feeling it in this fashion, because when you remove your feelings from your thoughts, you're no longer a human, you're just an idea. And ideologies are the basis of movements that don't do well for humans because it doesn't include the humanity. Feelings are our thoughts, and thoughts included in our feelings are us. Try to separate those two, suddenly you're not you, you're just either an idea or an empty vessel. And I think we all know nobody's an actual empty vessel, unless you just want to call someone that as a pejorative. And that's a pretty good one. Man, stop being an empty vessel. I like that one. I think I'm going to use that one from now on. That's a pretty solid pejorative. Can you stop being an empty vessel for 2 seconds? Anyhow.
I now call Mr. Jeremy Burford of Emmanuel College to oppose the motion.
By the way, this man was a very powerful MP for a very long time, until just recently.
Mr. Jeremy Burford of Emmanuel College, who is the first undergraduate opposing the motion.
Hold on a second. Boop.
James Baldwin is well known as one of the most vivid and articulate writers about the Negro problem in America. Mr. Baldwin had a difficult childhood, and he has personally himself suffered discrimination and ill treatment in the South of America. And I would like to say at this
Buckley looks so tired.
That it is not the purpose of this side of the House
story behind this,
to
but I don't
condone
want to
that in any way at all. It is not our purpose to oppose civil rights. It is our purpose to oppose this motion.
And I want you to hear, first off, he says right away, we're not here to oppose civil rights. He gave graciousness to the cause. He gave graciousness to the thought. He gave room for it as a reality, because that's not what we're here to topically argue. Let's take it off the table. And he'll speak about this for the length. But then he's going to describe exactly what partition we are here to speak about. And then that is the topic that we're going to limit ourselves to. Now, if this were modern debate,
do I have to deal with the idea that I have to somehow intellectualize, well, I should be able to use the N-word for this reason, and then we have to have a discussion about it? You want me to give you these great points that Andre's already given.
We would see
Andre have these points, but he cites
that
he uses cited
the defensive positioning of making someone make your point for you is now the ungracious effort of the protagonist in the situation. The offensive maneuver now is a backflip to make you prove my point.
This is bullshit, and I just wanted Destiny to solidify.
Alright, bro, hey, if it's bullshit, then why the fuck?
Including for the host, who would then say that if you think this is bullshit, you should just leave because you shouldn't be included in the conversation. That's the height of ungraciousness. Because the conversation went to a parameter they didn't like. They didn't agree with, so fuck you, is what they were saying. That's modern conversation.
Black people that partake in edgy jokes might do it in order to feel accepted amongst the group. Why doesn't it work that way for race play? And if it does, why are you okay with it?
And then there's a confabulation of the two ideas. For instance, why doesn't it work for race play? Well, I'll tell you irrelevance. Because we assume that if you're having that race play, we presume that you feel comfortable with including that in the background of your behavior and are being dishonest in your face-forward behavior, in your actual character. That is included in your character. You don't get to separate it irrelevant, even though I'm sure you separated it in the logic you use. I've heard you do that. You know, being involved with a whole bunch of folks who use you as the pit of a debased joke is wrong, but you still want to be involved because tribally, if you were to leave, you wouldn't have any friends. I actually have that on video when I approached him about it and said, hey man, you could do so well if you just weren't locked into the DGG. And he said, oh my God, and I kid you not, that's what he did. For 2 minutes, he literally stuttered over himself and said he couldn't be outside of it and that he owed everything to them. Okay. I mean, whatever you feel, man. But then don't say that you're engaged in anything beyond a dialectic. You have to admit that you're involved in a cult of some nature, a cult of personality, a cult of behavior, a tribalism, a group of people that is a clique. Call it that if you want, if it makes you feel better. But I have a lot of evidence that the people involved in this are literally just capitulating. And I mean this across the board. I mean, whether you're in Cynthia G land or you're over there in the just pearly things language, or you're in the disenfranchised of the fresh and fit, or you manage to get yourself somewhere down the chain of, there's so many of them, something diesel, or, you know, you're in the W&L society and you think you gotta work up them hours on the Roblox. No. This is disenfranchisement from the jazz, from the... It's dislocated you from the life. The interlocution. The creativity in yourself. Essentially, we're talking about a day and age where we no longer have these conversations because there is a certain clique, there's a certain group, there's always some group around that wants to troll or edgelord because they don't appreciate this jazz. They don't appreciate this love. They don't appreciate this. And I'm going to tell you right now, as someone who has a little bit of perspective on history, the snapback to this, the response to that, is going to be amazing. Just for the fact that I'm here. I know there's others too rejecting this, just like Moon. Moon is rejecting this and talking about it at length, as well as the acceptance of these long-form shows. We're getting out of the debate, bro, and we're getting into the poetry. And that is going to threaten a certain number of people that would have you believe that there's only one way to communicate. Badly. And that's some bullshit. No. Yeah, that's no. Yeah. No, that's some bullshit. Because the jazz, my friends, is coming.
Collect your fee afterwards. This side of the House denies that the American dream has in any way been helped by this undoubted inequality and suffering of the Negro. We maintain that, in fact, it has hindered the American dream. And if there had been equality, if there had been true freedom of opportunity, the American dream would be very much more advanced than it is now. If the American dream has made any progress, and I think it has been made in spite of the suffering and inequality of the American Negro, and not because of it. Now, it is also implied from this motion that the American dream is encouraging and worsening the suffering of the American Negro. This is emphatically not the case. The American dream, the American economic prosperity and respect for civil liberties has been the main factor in bringing about the undoubted improvement in race relations in America in the last 20 years. And Professor Arnold Rose, who is the author of The Negro in America, which is perhaps the definitive work on the subject, who is also a contributor to what was called a freedom pamphlet, so I should imagine that if he has any bias at all, he is in favor of the Negro. He said that this improvement in race relations will be seen in years to come as remarkably quick. And he has put it down.
And he's true. He's right. He's correct. It came around immensely quick when it was actually accepted by the public.
The increased social mobility of the American people.
And this is true as well.
Prosperity.
He's giving
and
grace.
I would put it to this House that industrialization and economic prosperity are two of the main ingredients of the American dream. And at the same time, again, I do not want to say that the Negro in America is treated fairly, but at the same time, the average
graciousness and honesty
of Negroes in America is exactly the same.
You notice that this person is not ignoring the gray area. They are including this. Because otherwise they wouldn't seem as rational. They wouldn't seem as comprehensive. They wouldn't seem as realistic or trustworthy. It's just that simple. So when you start to hear, and let me just put this out this, when you start to hear folks not allowing for the gray zone, not allowing for the anecdotes, not allowing for the other things because it doesn't work into their logic, that's a TP. That's a their problem, not a YP. That's not a you problem. Or if you're arguing an MP versus a YP, yeah, no. YP, well, because they don't have the drawers on. They're down on the ground. They want things to be the way they want them to be, and not the way they are. They want to manipulate the conversation so that they can win at the cost of winning, at the cost of fact, or the cost of truth, or the cost of feelings. And when I say this, I am not just saying it based off of what I feel. I'm saying it based off of a recent history. Wasn't that long ago.
This is like a conversation, or?
Yeah, I don't really have like anything else I really want to talk about other than this. So, like, I'm not really here to like do a podcast today or anything like that.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Yeah, that's just what I was making sure. Okay.
Yeah, it's just an extended conversation. I'll try my best here to.
The real world is affected by the disengagement in the conversation and the behaviors. Winning for the sake of winning isn't winning. That's losing, capitulating to fascist thought and behavior, to being an ass, to being a usurper of other people's well-being.
And where the hard are in private all the time, or it was like, or like you don't care about like.
Well, you know, blues is the jazz. It's just got a few less changes.
I feel like watching it again because it kind of.
And debate is jazz because it's complex. It's modality. Overlap.
I don't want to throw me in here, but like, you don't care about minorities or advocacy
like
for things like that. You care about whatever makes the world a better place for you to exist in, or makes the world work.
Playing E minor over
it. To be people get along and there's less racism in the world, but you're not particularly keen on advocating for those things. Right.
So like there's like a fundamental I don't want to get like too down like the ethics train, but like there's like the fundamental value that I typically look for is like what makes the world like kind of like a better functioning place for everybody, kind of, yeah. So there's not like any issue that I like intrinsically like care about. So like I don't care about like capitalism or freedom or liberty or minority rights or white people rights or anything like that. It's
so
just like at the end of the day,
this
like,
person is a nihilist essentially based off of what he just said. So I'm going to keep moving because that's what the point
I found that
is.
Absolutely amazing, and I understand
is that now there's a nihilism in the conversation, a disengagement with even. And by the way, I just want to share, the look on Trihex's face is actually what I'm feeling right now about this. It is a disengagement with the facts and truth so you can ignore your own behavior. And you can look at somebody else and say, see, they did it, so I can do it too. But that, my friends, is adolescence. And shalom, shalom, shalom! I'm so glad you could be here, by the way. Thank you for being here, Abba. I so do appreciate you. And once again, and by the way, Poo-Poo Sauce, what am I thinking? This is your second day in a row, Poo-Poo Sauce, and everybody in my chat is armed with a wrench, and that's because I believe in a certain amount of Wild West democracy. I think that. Why is it not? Oh, there's the choice. It's down at the bottom. You are now officially. And let me. I'm sorry. I gotta open up another page over here. So I can get to my get to a thing that's not ready to be seen. Hold on a second. I didn't even expect this today. What is going on? Let's see what happens when I change modality up a little bit. You are now a moderator, just like everybody else. Because, when the chat gets ornery and everybody is disagreeing, which very rarely ever happens, but occasionally does, it seems like the Roman Colosseum days. Yes, the crowd cheers while one person gets eaten by a lion because it's all about who's popular, what cred. But cred doesn't make any difference unless you're talking about a credit card in real life. Cred is the way somebody feels important through negative attention, which is adolescent behavior that you're supposed to leave behind. Because if you're seeking negative attention in life, you're going to start fucking shit up for other people and yourself. It's just that simple. which is why I am trying to urge us all to be more creative, bluesy or jazzy, whatever it be. It's all 145 in the end. 36251. But, you know, it's all 145. It's all rooted in freedom and creativity and allowing other people to be themselves and express themselves as they see fit to. Now, that included with the compassion side, the reasoning and the empathy, you do hit a wall. You do come to a point where you have to be compassionate for others and recognize that your behavior is indicative of your character. Which is why these debates, historically, are so important, because they are about character.
As well, so I have got the reference here from the United States News and World Report of July the 22nd, 1963, in which it points out, this will have to be the last interruption I take, as time is running short.
Mr. President, on a point of information, is the Speaker talking of real income or money income?
Yes, I'm talking of money.
Good question. Why is that so important? Is this real income, meaning real estate or fiduciary, bonds? Is this suggested income, or is this money income? These are terms that we kind of lost in modern English. It's more of a British thing, but this is very important because if you're talking about finance, these specifications matter. Nowadays, somebody would say to you, why are you stop messing with your conversation? Why are you being anecdotal? Why are you picking apart the terms? No, definitions matter. Being a crybaby bitch matters because it means that you can't actually defend yourself and you're a coward most of the time. And also, understanding, having comprehension of the situation, more than just less matters, especially when you put yourself out there as the great debater, or if you put yourself out there as the idea person or the person leading a whole group of folks. Bridget Moulton, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only, there is only one main mod. Main mod. Thank you for being here, Bridget. I'm so appreciative, which means that I need to just kick it back in. We are watching the Baldwin, James Baldwin versus the William F. Buckley debate of 1963 that I've been burying the lead as I normally do. Here are the Rouge Spheres. The Rouge Spheres, they're all almost on fire. They're like, oh God, Aaron, someone tell us what's going on. All right. The line of basically the battle for civil rights was created in this moment overseas. The decision for America to move forward in general, politically, personally, socially, civilly, started here. Because the world now was paying attention to the battles going on that were basically colloquial across the nation, the voting rights and such. This is where the world stage took note, and they took a vote on it. And we should note, they were in favor of civil rights. They were in favor of the idea that the American dream was had at the cost of the Black American. What we would call now foundational Black American. Some people stay the same as they get older, Ava says, or they get worse as they get older, Ava says. This happens when there is no change or true repentance. Yes, no comprehension or compensation or no self-work, self-observation. Yes, I agree. If they truly believed what they believe, whether good or evil, yes. And Bridget Moten, shalom and greetings, bonjour. Bonjour. Appreciate you. Let's get into it.
I'm talking of money income. I would not wish to disguise that. I would also say that in terms of this, there are only 5 countries in the world where the income is higher than that of the American Negro. And they do not include countries like West Germany.
By the way, these are arguments that are still being used to this very day.
Now, there are in America
sound familiar, by the way?
35 Negro millionaires. There are Negro 6,000 doctors and so on. Now,
there are now 1,500 black millionaires and a couple of black millionaires.
I merely wish to try and convey
so that has
a more
changed.
realistic and
but comparative to the larger number,
of the situation of the Negro. I agree that there are
Still the same percentage.
Negroes who are very poor indeed, such as the old
The audience
gentleman
isn't
in the
laughing
South
at
who,
they're laughing at the
was,
ridiculousness
talking
of the
about
statement. And I
some
want,
of his wealthier
did you see how
brethren.
uncomfortable
He was saying,
James
yes,
Baldwin was
some
there?
of these,
By the way, he
such as the old gentleman in the South who
he actually grimaces. Look,
who was talking about some of his wealthier brethren. And he was saying, yes, some of these rich Negroes, they put on airs, they're like the bottom figure of a fraction. The bigger they try to be, the smaller they really are.
I can't believe that guy literally quotes from Uncle Tom's Cabin right there.
In the last minute I have, that this debate is not whether civil rights should be extended to American Negroes or not. If it were, it would be a very easy motion to argue for and a very easy motion to vote for.
Graciousness. He's extending graciousness right away.
Concerns whether the American dream is at the expense of the American Negro. That is, whether the American Negro has paid for the American dream with his suffering, or whether the American dream has furthered Negro inequality.
Now, this was a new...
And I would deny
By the way, I don't want
those
you to be shocked at the concept. In 1963, this was a novel concept that we might accept as a nation the responsibility for the behaviors of our past. And coming to a conclusion about this, well, it implicated people elsewhere in the world as well. Oh no! I hate when that stuff happens, by the way. Hola! Konnichiwa, moshi moshi, привет, Katya, хорошо, good day, mate. Canadian, yeah? Would you like a beer there, mate? I ran out of them very quickly, didn't I? Hola? Yeah, I'm out of it. I just, I don't know anymore. I don't know. I'll be honest. I probably do, and I just forgotten. Oh, hello. That's just generally across Germanic territory. Hello. It's still hello. Hello. It's very simple. But talk is good. Talk is good. Yes. Actually, one of my favorite statements. There's a couple of them. There's two words that mean the height of joy, the zenith of joy. And I'm just gonna go off on the standard for a brief moment. In Russian, the word is kaif, and it's like saying, "Yeah, motherfucker, kaif." K-I-E-F, kaif. And in Japanese, it's sagoi, which means "yeah, motherfucker" as well. So, ciao, salut, komusta. I don't know komusta. Where's that? Oh, todo bom. Anyways, now we're totally off topic, but that's okay. Mabuhay, yeah. Oh my God, thank you for reminding me. Mabuhay. Language is so important in interpersonal relationship, in being compassionate, in being empathetic, in giving a damn, and showing people that you give a damn. So when you try to disassociate it, when you try to not be associated with your own language as a part of your behavior, well, it's actually kind of, it's crazy. It's actually a form of insanity. It's not just an accident, and some people do it because they're cynical. So, let me put this in more debased language. Some people do it because they're a fucking asshole. And they know better. But they get away with it because everybody around them is like, do it again. My pleasure, Abba, my pleasure. And it is a historical document, so you can find this in a couple different places, including the Aeon, A-E-O-N collection, and the Cambridge historical document, which it includes the early portion. I almost wanted to use that, but it's like 3 hours long of the before and after, and it is fascinating. William Buckley and James Baldwin do have communication directly that is not shared. It is absolutely fascinating. So, yeah. Let's keep moving.
I would say that Negro inequality has hindered the American dream, and I would say that the American dream has been very important indeed in furthering civil rights and in furthering freedom.
100%. We can't disassociate them, just like the language.
I beg to offer information.
We have to give it the graciousness it deserves.
It is now with very great pleasure and a very great sense of honour that I call for Mr. James Baldwin to speak third to this motion.
Hey! If you haven't read any James Baldwin,
now we have Mr.
Shame on you! No,
it's
it's really heady. It's really wonderful. It's prose. It's history. It's all kinds of stuff. He wrote almost 40
getting
books.
a wonderful
Like 40
reception
books.
here in the Cambridge Union.
It's one of the most prolific writers of the mid-20th century.
From all sides of the House, for Mr. Baldwin, who has been listening to the arguments.
Conservatives on the right.
Experience to the debate.
Good evening.
Liberal on the left.
I find myself, not for the first time, in the position of a kind of Jeremiah. For example, I don't disagree with Mr. Burford that the inequality suffered by the American Negro population of the United States has hindered the American dream. Indeed it has. I quarrel with some other things he has to say. The other deeper element of a certain awkwardness I feel has to do with one's point of view. I have to put it that way. One's sense, one's system of reality. It would seem to me that the proposition for the House, I agree that way, is the American dream at the expense of the American Negro, or the American dream is at the expense of the American Negro, is a question hideously loaded, and that one's response to that question, or one's reaction to that question, has to depend on an effect on where you find yourself in the world, what your sense of reality is, what your system of reality is. That is, it depends on assumptions which we hold so deeply,
he says. And I want to stop right here, because what he's just done is set forth his premise, where his arguments may be, what he feels about the subject, his association to the subject, and then the challenge to the subject in general, how he doesn't agree with the premise at all. So he's starting by saying, all right, I'm going to take part in this conversation, but let me give it the grace to say, I don't completely agree with everything in the premise itself. I think there's flaws in the logic. And instead of discarding the logic altogether, I'm going to include that logic, use your logic, and I'm going to expand upon it. Because there may be something you don't know. If you didn't get that from what he just said, I'm going to explain it to you, because I already did all the background research. And that's what he was saying. And he actually changed, it turns out, he changed his premise that he had written as he stepped up, because he realized he wasn't including the compassion and reason to reach across the aisle. That he had come with an argument. He had come with a comparative. He had come with a me versus them. But what he's done right away is to include, associate, give fallibility to himself, and make the topic human. Essentially, before he's gone any further, he's already won the conversation if this is a debate to be won. Why? Because he's played into the humanity. He's said, look, we're all the same. And if we want to find an equal ground, if we want to find a better place, we have to challenge this thought in itself. It's whimsical, it's magical, it's poetic, and you couldn't get away with it now. You couldn't get away with it now because the intellectualism would be challenged as an affront to the conversation itself, moving along at the pace that somebody else wants you to move because they want to have their turn to speak. Fact. As a matter of fact, sorry, let me find the right one.
Shit. What I'm concerned about is, why would you say that on your platform that literally thousands of people watch?
I don't think that there's this, like, because we're constructing, like, the mythical viewer, where there's somebody that watches me.
Mythical viewer. Listen, man. I actually deal with this in my day-to-day life, and I write about it for a living, so there's no mythical viewer.
There is no mythical viewer.
Talking about is the person that when I go into the
He wants to disengage the viewer from humanity.
Wants to step out into the street and fight.
Yes, and once it's put into humanity, the modern debate mind wants to seek a way to retain being right.
When I'm talking about mythical viewer, I don't think these are guys that listen to me that are like super racist and really hateful, but they're like, oh, well, I like Destiny, so I'm not going to say these things.
So in other words, in his mind, it's not the people who would listen to that rhetoric, it's somebody imaginary. He doesn't even associate in the conversation to the factual basis of the humanity within that conversation, and rather he'd like to flip it to somebody or something that doesn't exist. Because in the mind of the modern debate language, in the dialectic, nothing but the win exists. So fact, backing, support, information doesn't mean much to somebody who doesn't care.
Why are you yelling?
Oh, now
Why are you yelling at me? They will try to compartmentalize it in their mind, and then it expresses itself in ways that are harmful to people of color, like myself. Is what I'm trying to say to you.
And yes, Bridget Moten, he cannot deal with human feelings.
Like, do you think does this feel like a
much
conversation
less
to you?
that
when
the
you like
modern
rattle off like 15 different things, and I like don't.
And then
like
I'm just telling you.
He would minimalize and dismiss fact for his feelings, and then actually gaslight. Well, you just mentioned 15 things. I can't address it. I'm going to talk about 15 things. This is the modern debate style, and this is the archetype of the modern debate style, which isn't debate, it's argument. It's actually illogical, non-comprehensive, quick string, fight back, gamer logic. It's not argument at all. It's just a video game. And that's not what communication is. It's not a video game. It's interpersonal locution to get to a spot where we all either agree or disagree, or we move the dial and we get things fucking moving forward for humanity, not just a win so you feel like you can pull on your tiny pud a little bit further. Or your clit, or whatever the fuck you want to pull on. If you're that insensitive to the importance of the matters at hand, don't take part, please. Really, truly. I'm saying this on behalf of a larger group of people, the largest group of people. I think that in general, people don't want you involved if you don't have positive intention for the situation one way or the other. Whether you have a contentious point or not, if you don't have a good intention for the larger group, you shouldn't really be a leader of anything, personally. Communication breakdown! Yeah. Absolutely. Communication breakdown! Yeah, I agree. Anyhow, I'm sorry. The point of bringing this back up, and this particular podcast debate, is this is the end of the DT podcast. This is interpersonal relationships now, and the communications. The immediate aftermath of the DT podcast. And if you don't know what that is, I have other videos about that. But I thought that it really related to the humanistic attempt of Baldwin and Buckley to communicate. Something very important about social matters
a white South African or a Mississippi
that still affect us to this day.
Mississippi sheriff or a Frenchman driven out of Algeria.
And by the way, look at the graciousness. I want to run this back. Look at the intense attention that is being paid to Baldwin by Buckley. He's taking notes. He's listening.
It would seem to me the proposition before the House, if I put it that way, is the American dream at the expense of the American Negro, or the American dream is at the expense of the American Negro, is a question hideously loaded, and that one's response to that question, or one's reaction to that question, has to depend on an effect on where you find yourself in the world, what your sense of reality is, what your system of reality is. That is, it depends on assumptions which we hold so deeply as to be scarcely aware of them.
Because they are
a white
us.
South African, or a Mississippi sharecropper, or a Mississippi
graciousness,
sheriff, or a Frenchman driven out of Algeria, all have,
even though he doesn't agree with him,
a system of reality which compels them to, for example, in the case of the French exile from Algeria, to defend French reasons for having ruled Algeria.
Now, nowadays, at this point, somebody, let's say Destiny, would be like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I don't know. To try to talk over instead of hearing what he's saying, to hear the cogent and comprehensive point. That takes time. And by the way, his side of the argument is almost 30 minutes. So expect this to take some time.
The Mississippi or the Alabama sheriff.
But can you imagine if that was to happen today? Nobody would give them the time or space. Baldwin wouldn't be a thing. And we should be concerned about missing out on a Baldwin.
The system to which he owes his entire identity. Of course, for such a person, the proposition of which we're trying to discuss here tonight does not exist. And on the other hand, I have to speak as one of the people who've been most attacked by what we must now here call the Western or the European system of reality. What people in the world. The white supremacy, I hate to say it here.
Poo-poo sauce, you are a mod. Some reason you came up as non-mod. That's weird. Maybe I didn't press the button. Well, you're a mod now.
To this proposition has to be the question of whether or not civilizations can be considered as such equal, or whether one civilization has the right to overtake and subjugate and in fact to destroy another.
Never.
Now what happens when that happens? Leaving aside all the physical facts which one can quote, leaving aside rape or murder, leaving aside the bloody catalog of oppression, which we are in one way too familiar with already, what this does to the subjugated, the most private, the most serious thing this does to the subjugated.
My pleasure, Poo-poo
is
sauce.
to destroy his sense of reality. It destroys, for example, his father's authority over him.
It
His father can no longer
destroys
tell him anything because the
his
past
sense of reality. It destroys the sense of who has the power over him. I believe it's this one.
Hold on. So wait, everything that I cited in that everything I said to you in that conversation and everything that I'm saying now is backed up by hard evidence. And what you all are saying is backed up by how you feel about it.
So just simply put, you said that black people that partake in edgy jokes might do it in order to feel accepted amongst the group. Why doesn't it work that way for race play? And if it does, why are you okay with it?
I just explained to you that it works that way for race play too. I just
said. But why are you okay with it, but not edgy jokes?
Why am I? No, that's not. Oh my god, dude! It's so.
No, that wasn't the
have a
point.
Conversation with you if you're not going to listen.
The engagement or lack thereof isn't just palpable. It's an attempt.
Jokes are not okay.
To back up and help his friend win.
Slur between people. In polite company, that is non-mixed company, is not okay because it then reinforces the beliefs of the dominant class, such that people can end up taking it out on the subordinate class. They then reinforce thoughts, attitudes, and behaviors. We're not talking about mixed company here.
Okay, great. So if a black person is present, you're good.
I'll give you the same answer. It would actually make me question why the white person would want to engage in that.
Yes.
To be honest.
Same thing with rape play.
Exactly.
And by the way, did you hear that? Same with rape play is what Destiny said. So that was actually a great example of what he does to avoid actually engaging in the topic. He is now breaking the rules. If he was actually in a proper debate, he would have been challenged immediately, asked to retract, and/or take a point against him. Which could, in the case of the debate that we're actually watching, back in 1963, it could expulse him from the debate. And Emily says that she finds it strange that he has to explain that it seems like humans should be able to see value in humans at a basic level. Yes. Well, when you're dealing with someone that may actually be, in their own words, a sociopath. Yeah, he describes himself proudly as a sociopath. Then they don't care. Because they don't care about the effect on others. Which makes me want to know why this person up here, or any of those people that support this kind of behavior or mindset, should be debating topics that are so fucking important and making themselves the politico, the intellectual. Because they aren't. There is no intellectualism beyond the guy who's a professor, who's actually done the research and studies. But that doesn't matter, because expertise means nothing next to having sycophants that feed you information? I don't know. I really don't know, actually, at that level. It's like, it's so, yeah, so he wouldn't see it. Yeah, it's basically so he wouldn't see it. It's a way to tap each other on the shoulder and say, you know what, bro? Your bad behavior's okay, because I do that too. And that, my friends, Lido Caprada! Yeah. That, my friends, is cultism. It's the beginning of the dialectic way to the fascist mindset. And then that fascist mindset, it plays itself out. And by the way, I'm going to run this back real quickly, just a couple steps to play back the fact that the mirror here is that in 1963, Baldwin is warning of this exact thing. Not kind of. He's literally saying, watch out, because we can end up here if we aren't aware, if we aren't keeping an eye on this, if we aren't sensitive to the subject, and if we don't take part and engage in an honest way. And so let me just roll this back just a little bit. Oops. That was not what I meant to do. There we go. Sorry. Oh, it would help if I was actually... Oh, now I'm on the fire. Oh, no! I actually changed, give me 1 second. See, it's live! It's live. I'll get back there. Sorry, my bad. There we go.
We've been most attacked by what we must now here call the Western or the European system of reality.
Attacked by the European or Western systems of reality. And history does repeat itself.
For example, in the case of the French
That's why we can see in perspective that it's important to pay attention to this.
Algeria. The Mississippi or the Alabama sheriff, who really does believe when he's facing a Negro boy or girl that this woman, this man, this child must be insane to attack the system to which he owes his entire identity.
Hold on. Wait, everything that I cited in that everything I said to you in that conversation and everything that I'm saying now is backed up by hard evidence. And what you all are saying is backed up by how you feel about it.
So just simply put, you said that black people that partake in edgy jokes might do it in order to feel accepted amongst the group. Why doesn't it work that way for race play? And if it does, why are you okay with it?
I just explained to you that it works that way for race play too.
Okay, but why are you okay with it, but not edgy jokes?
Why am I? No, that's not. Oh my god, dude!
He didn't even say that he was okay with it. By the way, that was irrelevant putting it in there.
Okay,
repeatedly
I did
to
not
defend his
say
friend, and his friend thinks it's funny.
Edgy jokes are not okay.
By the way,
said that the
Destiny is not a relevance friend.
Between people.
They call him daddy.
In a polite company that is non-mixed company is not okay, because it then reinforces the beliefs of the dominant class such that people can end up taking it out on the subordinate class. They then reinforce thoughts, attitudes, and behaviors. We're not talking about mixed company here.
Okay, great. So if
literally what Baldwin is saying,
the proposition of which we try and discuss here tonight does not exist. And on the other hand,
what did you say, Baldwin? Some of those people.
Of course, for such a person, the proposition of which we try and discuss here tonight does not exist.
Huh? Talk
and
about a mirror.
On the other hand, I have to speak as one of the people who've been most attacked by what we must now here call the Western or the European system.
And what he's not talking about
reality.
is he's also hasn't come out as homosexual at that point.
People in the world.
Blue hair does drown out the conversation with madness and empty talk, or worse, with dismissive language at Aaron. That's what Abbas just said. So yes, that's his tactic.
What everyone's reaction.
It's an easy beat unless you
has to be the question
capitulate to it.
Or whether or not civilizations can be considered as such.
I wish I was advertising, by the way.
Or whether one civilization has the right to overtake and subjugate and in fact to destroy another. Now what happens when that happens? Leaving aside all the physical facts which one can quote, leaving aside rape or murder, leaving aside the bloody catalog of oppression, which we are in one way too familiar with already, what this does to the subjugated, the most private, the most serious thing this does to the subjugated, is to destroy his sense of reality. It destroys, for example,
destroying the sense of
his
reality.
father's authority over him. His father can no longer tell him anything because the past has disappeared. And his father has no power in the world. This means, in the case of an American Negro, born in that glittering republic, and in the moment you are born, since you don't know any better, every stick and stone and every face is white, and since you have not yet seen a mirror, you suppose that you are too. It comes as a great shock around the age of 5 or 6 or 7 to discover that the flag to which you have pledged allegiance, along with everybody else, has not pledged allegiance to you. It comes as a great shock to discover that Gary Cooper killing off the Indians when you were rooting for Gary Cooper, that the Indians were you. It comes as a great shock to discover that the country, which is your birthplace, and to which you owe your life and your identity, has not in its whole system of reality evolved any place for you. The disaffection, the demoralization, and the gap between one person and another, only on the basis of the color of their skins, begins there and accelerates throughout a whole lifetime. So that presently you realize you're 30 and are having a terrible time managing to trust your countrymen. By the time you are 30, you have been through a certain kind of mill. And the most serious effect of the mill you've been through is again not the catalog of disaster. The policemen, the taxi drivers, the waiters, the landlady, the landlord, the banks, the insurance companies, the millions of details, 24 hours of every day, which spell out to you that you are a worthless human being.
So why am I letting him go on? Because he is speaking in prose. He is making a point that is eloquent. He is being allowed to create a dissertation about the subject, to speak on it at length, as he feels, as he expresses, as he experiences, as he thinks. This is the act of an interlocutor. This is the act of an actual debater, expositorially so. Because James Baldwin didn't expect to say all the things he said, but he felt compelled to expand on what he had already written. And if you notice, he doesn't have notes in his hand. He's not reading from his script because he set his script down when he stood up. His points, he didn't need to follow them, he said. He knew exactly what they needed to hear. To hear the experience, to hear it from a human, to hear it in a human way. Because he knew they would give them space. But see, nowadays, if this were to be nowadays, we should expect that it would be more like...
If you can't stop talking. This is something I'm speaking to out of my soul, out of my humanity. And I don't debate my humanity with most people. I'm having this conversation with you all because I think it's important for this platform. And for people of color who want to be on this platform and see this kind of toxic behavior and say, fuck it, I'm never going to go near that. That's why I'm having this conversation with you all, and for no other reason. You might be able to shout me down. You all might be able to talk over me. You might even be able to possibly win this argument in the eyes of your viewers. But you know what you're saying to everybody else who would want to be a part of this and have conversations and build communities here and possibly build movements? You say to them, you're not welcome.
Yep.
That's why it makes me upset that we're having this conversation. That's why Cole cashed out like that.
Cole cashed out because he's a fucking bitch, dude. Don't act like he was taking some fucking high ground on some moral bullshit.
What?
Alright, bro.
Like, honestly,
you need to
hold on.
Tormenting, hold on, bro.
Let me get this out.
Oh,
he's trying to
finish the fuck up, dude, and then I'm gonna pass it off to my other bro, alright?
Because what matters is that the next person speak and that all of the facts get washed away. And that you shut up because somebody else wants to speak. That, my friends, is fascism. And that's what they're practicing. That's actually what they're practicing. Argue it all you want. I've spoken to the experts now. More than one. I've done a lot of research on the subject now. A lot of reading, a lot of watching, a lot of review, a lot of self-bias checking. We are watching the mindset of fascism build from an innocuous source of video game players who think that this logic is everything. They will do anything. They'll destroy the history, they'll ignore the history, they'll support at any cost this person, because if this person isn't real, if this person over here doesn't have their, full support, then they can't be real. If they don't bond together, their bad behaviors, their actions towards society, their beliefs in society, they're edging all of this conversation towards a non-conclusion, towards a bad conclusion, towards nonsense and the dialectic of adjusted language and fear state in place of socially acceptable behavior. Well, they are well underway, my friends. They are far into the surface, far into the complex of the behaviors of the public, and I point out that we wouldn't have Fresh and Fit, Just Pearly Things, whatever podcast, the Red Pill. We wouldn't have any of this if the dialectic and the conversation hadn't broken down so badly, because this has now affected gender relations. It's not on accident either. It is all associated with a lack of comprehensive communication or allowance to communicate comprehensively. That's my association to this. That's what I'm putting together for you. And I'm using a very simple comparative panel. The Tri-Hex situation and Baldwin and Buckley. We haven't even gotten to Buckley. I can't wait for Buckley, because I can't wait for you to see how somebody who wants to contradict a situation, knowing they can't, actually deals as an intellectual and not just an asshole who happens to have a mic and a video game company supporting, which, by the way, Activision and Blizzard actively pay this person over there, from my understanding, to play their video games. So that means that they're okay with all of the things you've seen and the behaviors and the language. I wonder if they actually are or not. I actually know. Abba says it's not welcome, like the neo-Nazi style, sorry, let me pull this up. Like the neo-Nazi tyrant deep antebellum South, right? Dismissive. Yeah, they want to dismiss it because it doesn't matter to them, and as long as they dismiss it because they're, well, in the public eye, then that's what matters, because when you have sycophants or cultists who follow you, the only thing that matters is your word. Because cult of personality, that's also built in the dialectic, just like Marxism was. Stalinism. Yeah, it's a lot of comparatives. Just like Nazism. But hey, let's not go down that road. That's just too easy. That's really actually fucking way easier than it should be. Failed artist, failed, gets into politics, get rejected out of politics, responds by creating his own politic, goes from conservative when it doesn't work out into, left-leaning, and then pretends to be left-leaning while espousing essentially conservative arguments from the position of saying you're left because you dyed your hair blue. Yeah, it sounds really familiar. It's really familiar. Cult. Well, yeah, it essentially is. I mean, it's cult behavior. It's fascist behavior. It's a mindset of the dialectic. And the comparisons to certain historical figures are, wow, they're not cool. It's not cool. It's strangely horrific. Yeah. Anyhow, let's move back to a more civilized time of communication. Oops. Oh, hello. Phone. Oh, it's doing what it did yesterday. All right. I know how to solve this problem now. By the way. Yep, YouTube crashed. I know you crashed. Yes, indeed. I would like to resume watching where I left off. Thank you very much. And oh, it's going to be mean to me now again. This is what happens in the live, folks. And that's why you always come prepared with a Mickey freaking backup, folks. Don't worry. You know, I got a backup to a backup to a backup around these parts. But sometimes it just takes a second to readjust shit. Huh. I love when I try to... It wants to prove me wrong. So, hold on a second. Gotta reload that real quickly. I apologize for any delay here, folks. This is what happens when you do a live show. And,
has helped you to escape the trap. But what is worse than that is that nothing you have done, and as far as you can tell, nothing you can do.
Bridget... It's very interesting. No, I think, I don't think he pre-planned it at all. I think it just ended up that way. I think he wanted to be a musician. He went to school to be a musician. I think he ended up playing video games because he was home a lot and didn't have a job early on. And Alba says, if we don't study the past, we're all cursed to relive it in the future. 100%. In Stephen Kenneth Bonnell's, the second's case, he was a carpet cleaner and he got into game playing. He started being competitive, but it turned out he was using bots and he wasn't actually successful. He was gaming decently, but he wasn't successful, and he became an early streamer while playing video games. So he made a lot of that ground for the popularity of watching someone playing a stream and talking politics. But he also got himself involved with a mayoral race, and he was involved in that until they found out that he was dropping the N-bomb and anti-trans and suppressing people and banning them from his chat as a matter of funny. He thinks that bullying, cyberbullying via the banning and the ban hammer or whatever, and anybody who criticizes him is funny, and then he uses that to criticize them while they can't speak back to him. Power play stuff. So he basically got let go of his involvement of the campaign because the mayor, the person running for mayor, who also lost, by the way, not solely because of that association, but it did play into it. Well, let's just say that they weren't very happy with the fact that the diligence wasn't done about his background. And that's why we haven't seen dude involved with any other campaign, and that's also when he went from being conservative to liberal suddenly. And, yeah. We've seen him criticizing everything ever since, and for the past 5 years, we've watched the language be tumultuously backflipped. So that when you communicate with some of these folks, they don't even speak English anymore. They're speaking idiocratic. They're speaking a dialectic that does not engage. It's just them waiting to tell you something they think they know. Doesn't matter if it's true or not. If it's trolling, they'll just backtrack by saying it's a joke. Or if they're wrong, they'll backtrack by saying it's a joke. Not realizing that their behaviors matter, their associations matter, and the way that they use their language really matters. And they're in our public structures. They're in our society. They're voting. They're having children. So, know that. Know that. Okay? Okay.
Will save your son or your daughter from meeting the same disaster and not impossibly coming to the same end. Now, we're speaking about expense. I suppose there's several ways to address oneself to.
So you notice he's also taken apart the commentary, the construct, piece by piece.
What that word means here.
So what does expense in this case mean?
Let me put it this way.
Excuse me.
That from a very literal point of view.
Cabling.
The harbors and the ports and the railroads of the country. The economy, especially of the southern states, could not conceivably be what it has become if they had not had, and do not still have indeed, and for so long, so many generations, cheap labor.
Point proven right there. So, has the American dream come at the cost? Yes. Of a black person? Yes, because cheap labor.
And I
actually making your point. I love that.
I built the railroad.
Yes, Bridget, it is horrible. Bridget Moten says it's horrible. We're going backwards instead of forward, and that is evident at least in these specific people. They are the majority, but they are part of enough. They're vocal enough to where they've affected things like, sorry, Mr. Baldwin, where they've affected things like QAnon, Reddit, dropping the M-bomb because they think it's funny in private, disassociating their behavior from the character, sociopathic behavior as fun and bullying because it's just part of what gets you, in the group. Alba says he used the platform in a very underhanded delivery system to brainwash young, impressionable children, exposing them to adult content, a XXX lifestyle, and a big helping of normalizing neo-racism. Wow, that has summed it up pretty well. I'd agree. That's exactly what we're seeing. And, there's a number of other folks, Semitic folks and the Cynthia G's of the world that are just propelled, that are helped along. The Dennis Sperlings, the JPTs, the Fresh and the Fits, they're helped along because that mindset, that inability to engage in the acceptance of that inability as norm and normalized behavior, language, discourse, or lack thereof, because it's normalized, it becomes a tribalized badge of honor to be a shitty person and to debase oneself. Why? Adolescent, stunted, lack of emotional intellect. Baby people doing baby things while they shit in their panties, throw it at you and pretend that it's funny. And because they know it's not right, they need people to support them and be just like them so that they can mirror and get away with bad behavior. That's adolescent, folks. That's like junior high school shit. Mean Girl. It's even worse when it's just a bunch of dudes who are mostly incels, overweight, sitting at home, playing video games, looking for a job, or hacking. Which, by the way, I've been looking into the usage of a totally separate topic, just a shot across the bow. Bow! Looking at inappropriate numbers for viewership comparative to subscribers and the amount of bots. So if you're at home, please do so. If you're looking at a computer, open up multiple pages of my YouTube program. You can mute the rest of them, as many as you can. And that will actually give me more viewers, just like the other folks do. Because apparently that's acceptable to cheat. So okay, if it's okay for them to do it, why don't I do it too? And by the way, there are bots you can download that will allow you to add thousands of non-existent subscribers who will follow one person to watch a show. Like Heisenberg. I don't know who Heisenberg is. Heisenberg, you can go look him up. In People, Heisenberg. He has about 1,600 followers, there may be more. And no videos, and no support structure. Yet Heisenberg posts on Destiny's page, and in Destiny's Reddit, and I'd say that there's probably more than just one. So 1,600 times, let's just say 10, that's 16,000. If you only have 6,000 people watching on any given day, and you have 680,000 subscribers, all you have to do is look at the Discord usage. Discord usage has 4 times as many actual users. So I'm going to say that we can use the power of 4 as an example. Oh, and yeah, we can add in male privilege, white male privilege, and entitlement. And while we're on that, by the way, hold on one second. Let me see if I can pull it up fast enough. I probably can get to it. Give me 1 second. Unplanned video. Hold on a second. It's in my shorts.
I do believe this. If that upsets you,
says
that's
that racism
that's totally
is
okay.
not a big factor in
I think
America.
that racism is a problem in the United
Yes,
States.
my friend.
Racism is not a big
Is
problem.
white
in the United
privilege
States. It is
in
absolutely not. Like,
Check
I
it
could
out.
probably think of 10 things in the U.S. that are a bigger issue right now. I do believe this. If that upsets
It
you,
says
that's
that racism
that's
is
totally
not
okay.
a big factor in
I think
America.
that racism is a problem in the
Yeah, he's
United
okay if it
States.
upsets you.
Racism is not a
Because in his
white
mind,
privilege.
nothing matters but what he says.
Like, I could probably
Being associated with the rest of the world doesn't fucking matter. Because
bigger issue right now.
apparently, in his own words, he's a sociopath, and he's proud of it.
It says
That's
that racism
that's
is
totally
not
okay.
a big factor in
I think
America.
that racism is a problem in the United
Yes,
States.
my friend.
Racism is not a big
Is
problem.
white
in the United
privilege
States. It is.
Alba says, yes, Bridget,
Check it out.
backwards, but what social media platforms which accelerated this heinous monstrosity,
It says that racism is
totally
not
okay.
a big factor in America.
criminal, entitled, corrupt mindset. It is evil. I agree. And I'd say we can also look towards the people who are programming the algorithm. I think the mirror is happening from
If that upsets you,
them.
It says that racism
that's
is
totally
not
okay.
a big
And it's a
factor
small
in
group of
America.
them.
Racism is a problem in the United
And all you
States.
got to do is
Racism is not a
take a look at the
white
YouTube
privilege.
creator program
It absolutely not.
on the
Like, I
videos.
could probably think of 10 things in the US
On
that
YouTube's
are a
main
bigger
channel.
issue right now. I do believe this.
And
If that
you can
upsets
find
you,
the person who
says
programs
that
the algorithm, and you
racism
tell
is
me
not
if
a
he
big
doesn't
factor in
resemble
America.
Racism is a problem
the
in the United States.
GGGers
Racism is not a big
and
problem. It is
the incels.
Like, I could probably think of 10
And
things in the US that are a
if there
bigger
isn't a
issue
lot
right
of
now,
coincidental
I do believe this. If that upsets you,
behavior.
that's
racism
that's
is
totally
Anyways,
okay.
but we're off topic
I think
because
racism is a
these
problem in the
things
United
are
States.
involved
Racism is not a big problem.
White privilege.
in why and how these
Probably think of 10
concepts
things in
get
the US that are a
propagated, but
bigger
the
issue right
concepts
now.
against them
I
do not.
If that upsets you,
says
Just like how, you know, my video
a big factor in America.
has maybe 150 views on it, but his video has thousands upon thousands of views until he decided to take it down because it didn't suit his actual agenda. It didn't make him look good, which, by the way, that's what that person does, is anything that might prove what we're showing, he takes down or gets wiped out. And I'm so thankful that history doesn't let that happen very easily. The ones who spew hate, yes, it's evil, and they do get more views, and that's being propagated by YouTube's algorithm and the people at YouTube, because they know that they make more money off of it. So it's up to us as a community to remind them that we don't want that. That YouTube used to be a happy place where Mr. Guitar Man and kittens and the cutest puppy on the planet and all sorts of things existed, but the bad things were suppressed into the background, so you had to go looking for them, and the good stuff was pushed up front. Now it's the reverse. Now we're seeing the debate bro culture is everything and everywhere, and that the Twitch, to keep up with Twitch and Kick and all the rest of them, they are debasing themselves instead of allowing the platform to be a creative enterprise of positive discourse. And I would say it's even associated to why we had problems in the last election and so much more. And Abba says, YouTube keeps me from watching you. You don't get notifications, and it unsubs you from my channel? Is that what was happening last week? Because last week somebody was fucking with my subscriber algorithm. 3 people, 1 person, with 2 bots, which is how I found the bot thing out. And basically they can... poo-poo sauce, we might appreciate this. 1 person with 3 bots keyed me into the entire bot story surrounding Stephen Bonnell and the cheating involved with viewership and subscribers. That could affect somebody's business, that could affect somebody's contracts, but I think first we need to adjust and associate to the lack of engagement with the conversation again, okay? But those of you that are, the 2 of you that maybe hate watching, take this back to your daddy. Tell him that no matter where you ban me from, you can't ban me from reality. You're going to have to face me at some point. And I gather it's going to be on the downward slide. still remains to be seen. But perspective is a hell of a fucking gift.
In Washington, and therefore some power in the world, was created by my labor and my sweat, and the violation of my women and the murder of my children.
Strength.
This,
in adversity,
in the land of the free and the home of the brave. And no one can challenge that statement.
That might be, Abba. Abba says they're afraid of me.
In another way, this dream, and we'll get to the dream in a moment.
I mean, Smith kind of told me that, didn't he?
Is
not completely, but mentioned some of it.
You watch this.
They can't actually interact with me because they don't know how to.
But not only.
What a great dude. Smith was. That was. Oh my God. Can I just hold on a second? I just want to thank, if he happens to come across this, I just want to thank Smith, the real Smith, once again, for sharing, for coming on, for capitulating to my making him feel cringy over my dancing. I'm totally going to use that from now on to just get people to call to get me to stop dancing. Maybe I could get people to send me money to stop dancing. That'd be great. Or to continue. I don't know. Hey. Anyhow. Thank you so much, Smith, by the way. Kind, considerate, compassionate, thoughtful, intellectual, jamming like jazz. It was like jazz, man. It was so enjoyable. It was such a good conversation, and so many people have told me after that, personally, I've gotten so many comments about it, how it was not just endearing, but important, interesting, and gave a humanism to the subject that some folks hadn't thought about, just so you know. It says, block you, no notifying or unsub you from channel. That speaks volumes. Oh, shit. Oh, yeah. No notification. Unsubbing from my channel. Yeah. No, I honestly, if you would, do me a favor. Every one of you can write to YouTube directly through your own channel. You can notify them that you don't like the behavior, that there is something wrong, and they'll listen. Especially if you're all talking about the same creator. Because I can also tell you this, that my hashtags don't carry me into anything. I've been doing research on that and testing, which is why all of my titles have hashtags. Because my hashtags are all associated to big number things that should put me right in line with viewership. And it's not coming up on rando pages. Not even on pages that I'm associated with. So yes, there is a suppression within the language, in the behavior, in the associations, and these things fucking matter, folks. Especially if you're talking about somebody else's business, when they'll propagate one person's business who spreads dislike, hate, disenfranchisement, and more, and they're all associated to one group of management folks who all kind of had a spread out conflict of interest, in my opinion, by taking part in basic platforms of YouTube as well, management platforms, creative platforms. These things need to be disengaged, as well as whoever's designing the algorithm. The format that they had earlier on, about 5 years ago, was way more financially stable for them, way more financially beneficial for everybody involved as far as the creator is concerned, and also it allowed for people like epic rap battles to exist. They wouldn't exist now. Mr. Guitar Man, and so many more. The Gregory Brothers, Songify Your Life. None of that would have come to the surface now. It would have been buried by anger and hate. And Bridget Moten says she noticed the same thing with her shorts. She only gets a certain amount of views and then it dies out. Yes. Yeah. Because the algorithm is only supporting certain people, and the actual use of or utilization of the algorithm gives you a time period instead of just propagating and propagating. And they're doing this on purpose to make it seem like there's actual involvement. But once again, this is convenient. They're making it seem like they're doing their job, but it's convenient because the algorithm's workload is being given to a few creators. And all you have to do is look at who the top creators are. You're going to find something convenient and consistent. They aren't the same as 6 or 7 years ago. And I actually just went back. I just went back because I don't know if you know this. I don't drop a single one of my subscriberships. I still have the same ones as the first day I joined YouTube in 2009. Yeah. And I was actually paired with a whole bunch of people early on because I was brought into the creator program as a gimme with 45 subs, all of which were like early on. I think I had Daystorm Powers, Mystery Guitar Man. I had a whole bunch of famous people, a whole bunch of big YouTubers. So that's how I got like brought in, as well as I was production managing that stuff. So there was a different way things worked. And if you don't believe that it can be controlled that way, well, I was monetized until 2 years ago when they were like, you aren't using your account, we're going to demonetize you. And Bridget says, and how does this happen? She's not monetized, but when her medical videos were starting to take off, they put ads on her videos. Yes. You're not monetized, but they monetize off you. These are all things we need to talk to them about, to need to look at them about, and if money is made off of you, you should be making some money off them. And I bring to point, Akil is not Tupac, because for many years, unknown people were making money off of Akil's likeness, claiming that he was Tupac Shakur, the late Tupac Shakur. My friend Akil is 5'3". Tupac was 5'10". Different builds, different people, different humans, different timelines. But it didn't stop YouTube from making a lot of money, it seems, off of advertising revenue on all of the videos and hundreds of thousands of hours. But we're totally off topic now, totally far out. But yes, there's an issue here, and there's a lot of cheating, and there's a lot of bullshit, and YouTube knows, because if they admitted it, they'd have to rebuild their platform. And I think we should make them do that. They're Google, after all. They can afford to pay someone $600 to $1,000 a year to just think in a corner because they have a degree. Meanwhile, by the way, YouTube is an exceptionalist society that isn't about the educated. It's about the capitulated. Those who think like they do. Those who can become a Googler. You have to take remember the spinners? Yeah. They stopped doing that when people were like, boy, this looks like a cult. Yeah. Similarities, mirroring? Yes. 100%.
In the Deep South, you are dealing with a sheriff or a landlord or a landlady or the girl of the Western Union desk. And she doesn't know quite who she's dealing with, by which I mean that if you're not part of the town, and if you are a northern nigger, it shows in millions of ways. So she simply knows that it's an unknown quantity, and she wants to have nothing to do with it.
Alba says the chosen few, right, Aaron
wait for a while
and
to get your
Bridget?
telegram.
Digital plantation making money off of us. Yes,
a man,
that's what it feels like. That's
very
what it seems
easy
like.
to deal with. But what is happening in the poor woman, the poor man's mind, is this. They've been raised to believe, and by now they helplessly believe, that no matter how terrible their lives may be, and their lives have been quite terrible, and no matter how far they fall, no matter what disaster overtakes them, they have one enormous knowledge and consolation, which is like a heavenly revelation. At least they are not black. Now I suggest...
Wow, that was fucking...
I'm
sorry. That whole statement, you could never
happen to a human being.
You could never use that now because somebody would stop you before you were even done. They would yell over you. They would scream at you because you're actually using pretty language, because you're using prose.
Terrible. And no matter how far they fall, no matter what disaster overtakes them, they have one enormous knowledge and consolation, which is like a heavenly revelation. At least they are not black. Now I suggest that of all the terrible things that can happen to a human being, that is one of the worst. I suggest that what has happened to white Southerners is in some ways, after all, much worse than what has happened to Negroes there. Because Sheriff Clark in Selma, Alabama,
Excuse me for 2 seconds, folks.
Cannot be considered, no one can be dismissed as a total monster. I'm sure he loves his wife, his children. I'm sure that, he likes to get drunk.
Loud back.
He's, after all, one's got to assume, and he is visibly a man like me. But he doesn't know what drives him to use the club, to menace with the gun, and to use the cattle prod. Something awful must have happened to a human being to be able to put a cattle prod against a woman's breast, for example. What happens to the woman is gaslit. What happens to the man who does it is in some ways much, much worse.
Yes, it's
this
much
is being
worse.
done, after
For
all.
the man who's gaslit because you were
Not
drowned
100
out
years
with the
ago,
yelling.
but in 1965, in a
Give me 2
country
seconds,
which is
folks. I
blessed with what we
forgot
call
to turn the AC on
prosperity,
this morning because it was so cool.
a word
in
you won't
here.
examine too closely,
But don't worry, I'm wireless. I can hear it.
with a certain kind
And I
of
can see
social
everything.
coherence, which calls itself a civilized
Oh
nation,
my
and which
gosh.
espouses the notion of the
No
freedom
wonder
of the
the animals
world.
are so laissez-faire. Let's kick up the
And it is
AC.
perfectly
Why
true
don't
from
we?
the point of view now simply of an American Negro.
Don't forget to turn the AC on when you live in LA,
Any
folks.
American Negro
Especially when you got
watching
that
this,
industrial. Like
no matter
I do.
where he is, from the vantage point of Harlem, which is another terrible place, has to say to himself, in spite of what the government says we can't do anything about it. But those are white people being murdered in Mississippi work farms, being carried off to jail.
Don't worry,
Those
don't
are
worry.
white
Nothing in
children
it. Nothing in it.
running up and down the streets. The government would find some way of doing something about it.
Hopefully that'll get on
We have a
stream
civil
film.
rights bill now. We
Clip
have an
it,
amendment.
clip it. Someone clip
the
it, please.
15th Amendment nearly 100 years ago.
I need that.
I hate to sound again like an Old Testament prophet.
Now that's
But if the
clout.
amendment was not honored
Spill
then,
a drink and don't give a
I don't
fuck.
have any reason for believing the civil rights bill will be honored now. And after all, one's been there since before, a lot of other people got there. If one has got to prove one's title to the land, isn't 400 years enough? 400 years.
When is enough?
3 wars.
What
The
is
American
enough?
soil is full of the corpses of my ancestors. Why is my freedom or my citizenship or my right to live there, how is it conceivably a question now? And I suggest further that in the same way, the moral life of Alabama sheriffs and poor Alabama ladies, white ladies, their moral lives have been destroyed by the plague called color, that the American sense of reality has been corrupted by it. At the risk of sounding excessive, what I always felt when I finally left the country, found myself abroad in other places, and watched Americans abroad. And these are my countrymen, and I do care about them. And even if I didn't, there is something between us. We have the same shorthand. I know. When I look at a girl or a boy from Tennessee, where they came from in Tennessee. And what
There's
that
no
means.
denying
No Englishman
understanding
knows
each
that,
other
no Frenchman,
because
no
of
one
our
in the world
backgrounds.
knows that, except
And that's something else that's important to. When somebody is telling you that you don't know any better, or that somehow in the conversation you couldn't possibly know because you don't come from where they are, or you don't know because, unless you're talking about education level, intellectual level. That's different. Those lines can be drawn. Being on a different level intellectually, that is a thing. At some point, you can point out, look, you aren't having this discussion at the same level as I am. As a matter of fact, let me, I believe it's this one.
So everything that I cited in that everything I said to you in that conversation and everything that I'm saying now is backed up by hard evidence. And what you all are saying is backed up by how you feel about it.
So just simply put, you said that black people that partake in edgy jokes might do it in order to feel if it does, why are you okay with it?
I just explained to you that it works that way for race play too. I just said it.
But why are you okay with it, but not edgy jokes?
Why am I? No, that's not. Oh my god, dude! It's so hard to have a conversation with you if you're not going to listen.
Okay.
I didn't say. I did
Addressing,
not say that
engaging,
edgy jokes are not okay.
Listening.
I said that the N-word as a slur between people
If anything, this conversation slips us back.
Is not okay because it
years,
reinforces
decades,
the beliefs of the dominant class, such that people can end up taking it out on the subordinate class. They then reinforce thoughts, attitudes, and behaviors. We're not talking about mixed company.
Do I have to deal with the idea that I have to somehow intellectualize, well, I should be able to use the N-word for this reason, and then we have to have a discussion about it.
Baldwin's point of having to prove yourself on your own land. Again, when is enough? 400 years.
But he cites them. He uses cited studies. That's not
the
good
entitled,
enough. So for me,
those who have,
I don't mean Andre's not good enough, but that's not good for some of y'all. So for me, I'm just like,
would laugh at that concept.
Right there, bro. Hey, bro.
So me being a proud black Latino that I am, I'm not with the bullshit, and I'm just telling you straight up, this is bullshit, and I just wanted Destiny to solidify.
Alright, bro, hey, if it's bullshit, then why the fuck when I invited you on this show? Hey, bro, do I gotta mute you, bro? Holy. Alright, bounce, you bounce the fuck out, dude. Get the fuck out already, dude. Just get out.
No, because the engagement, they're not interested in engagement. Their engagement is about win or loss. Doesn't matter at the cost of what. Even if you have to prove yourself when you shouldn't have to, when it's a given.
Edgy jokes might do it in order
denying
to
the only kin they have. We talk about integration in America as though it was some great new conundrum. The problem in America is that we've been integrated for a very long time. Put me next to any African, and you will see what I mean. And my grandmother was not a rapist. What we are not facing is the results of what we've done. What one begs the American people to do for all our sakes is simply to accept our history. I was there not only as a slave, but also as a concubine. One knows the power, after all, which can be used
Bridget, anyone who speaks up gets booted out
over that person.
Because that's, and by the way, I don't know if you were here that day. There was a day not long ago, last Friday, 2 Fridays ago, when I did the Destiny N-Bomb review, where, or maybe it was the incest. Yeah, I think it was the incest. One of the DGGers or Dalaban or somebody from that group showed up here and started to argue about whether or not it was democratic for Emily to boot him once we'd given him enough rope to basically hang himself by, or themselves. And they found it undemocratic, though Emily was just basically benching the person. And she wasn't really booting. And they found it abhorrent that it wasn't very democratic. But mind you, someone like Destiny, in this case, and many of the others, they use banning as a joke. They use banning as a social control. They use banning as clout. They use excommunication, segregation, social degradation, disassociation, and disengagement as power. And that is a step in fascism, by the way. I wish I was making that up, but that's for real. That's a real deal. That's shit. That's some bullshit. That's fucked. It's so fucked. And we should really oh, am I in? Hold on a second. Am I missing a piece of the conversation here? Oh, what happened? Oh, because I'm still in top chat. I hate when I do that. Why does it not take me to normal chat? Oh yes, you were responding to, Emily was very fair, and she was like, nope, you're in the corner. A grown ass, you could tell he's a grown ass man too. What you been in the corner? I didn't want to be in the corner. Then he responded like an adolescent. By the way, I did go to his page. It's nothing. It was just a bot. It's just a literally like a just an altar page. And, oh, by the way, folks, Jessica X, literally Libby, Jessica X. I've been looking at the waveforms of the voices. Yes, Abba says, it takes us all back decades into a dark, primeval place and time. Wow, kick them off when you're out of the racist I'm sorry. The demeaning and dehumanizing language. Yes. Yeah. Oh, when they don't agree, fuck you. Get out of here. Fuck you. Fuck you. And by the way, I'm banned everywhere in Destiny World because God forbid that person actually have to interact with someone like me. He actually, he had a big old news story. Quincy Corantos. I think actually, I'm about to actually locate where the guy is. He keeps saying Somalia, but he's not in Somalia. I know because the IPs don't fucking match. So he's not. He's either he's in North America somewhere. Likely Canada, it looks like. So Quincy Corantos, not to be confused with my friend Quincy, but Corantos brought on a FBI's Most Wanted onto Destiny's platform, and Destiny just doubted everything and was essentially cynical to the whole situation. You know, and by the way, thank you, Emily. Yeah, nobody wants to be a mod, but that's why everybody should be a mod. Yeah, I thought so too. But then I looked a little closer, and I'm waiting for Libby to show back up so that we can talk about it. Because, yeah, there's some holes, there's some problems, there's a... look, voices are thumbprints. And the waveforms, they just don't lie. Language imprint doesn't lie. Language usage and the utilage of language and the practice or the specific terminology. And how did this come about? I was spending some time watching Kidology. And I found some very interesting things going on. Very interesting things. So, I'm not going to go too far down that rabbit hole because I'm building a show on that. So, because this is some fascinating shit right now. My theory is pretty wild. But if it's true, yes, Emily, something feels a little nervous about it because you can get in trouble too. Oh yeah, well, you know, not in my chat. Pretty much, since you all have the power, by the way, you know, it's all up to you guys. I mean, that's, you know, and there's no way to time each other out, which I think is hilarious. Except for Bridget. Bridget can time anyone out. Bridget can actually boot people. Yeah, no, you're fantastic. You're fantastic. And I know what you're talking about, Bridget. Don't even worry. Don't even worry. Shit happens. It's a misunderstanding. You didn't catch one day. You came in a little late. Anyway, all right, Mr. Baldwin. Let's hear the end of his argument.
In Europe,
we haven't heard
know about
Buckley.
Europeans was what they didn't know about me. They weren't trying, for example, to be nasty to the French girl or rude to the French waiter. They didn't know they hurt their feelings.
They didn't know they hurt people's feelings.
They didn't have any sense.
Talking about Americans?
Woman, this particular man, though they spoke another language and had different manners and ways, was a human being.
They didn't know they
and
were
they
human
walked
beings.
over them with the same kind of bland ignorance, condescension, charming, cheerful, with which they'd always patted me on the head and called me shy, and were upset when I was upset. What is relevant about this is that whereas 40 years ago when I was born, the question of having to deal with what is unspoken by the subjugated, what is never said to the master.
How do you deal with what is unsaid by the subjugated, what is never mentioned to the master? A concept that we've internalized, but forgotten, I believe. Because we may be just a decade or two too far away from the experiences of people like James Baldwin.
Well, having to deal with this reality was a very remote possibility. It was in no one's mind. When I was growing up, I was taught in American history books that Africa had no history, and neither did I. That I was a savage, about whom the less said the better, who had been saved by Europe and brought to America.
Saved. They were told they were
And of course,
saved.
I believed it. I didn't have much choice. Those are the only books there were. Everyone else seemed to agree. If you walk out of Harlem, ride out of Harlem, downtown, the world agrees. What you see is much bigger, cleaner, whiter, richer, safer than where you are. They collect the garbage. People obviously can pay their life insurance.
So if you're entitled or you're
safe, you're not.
maybe surrounded by
and you go back home.
the things uptown,
and it would
you
seem
won't
then,
see
of course,
what the people from
that it's
downtown
an act of God.
innately
This
know.
is true.
That
That
disenfranchisement,
you belong.
the disassociation, and
white
the
people have put
inability to engage with anything
only
other than what
since
you
the Second
know
World War
is also part of the
There's been a counter image in
dialectic
the
now.
world. And that image not come about through any legislation on the part of any American government, but through the fact that Africa was suddenly on the stage of the world, and Africans had to be dealt with in a way they'd never been dealt with before. This gave an American Negro for the first time a sense of himself beyond a savage or a clown. It has created,
Emily says,
and will
oh shit,
create
oh my god,
a great many conundrums.
I don't know if I can repeat that.
One of the great things that the white world does not know, but I think I do know.
Emily says, I think the conditioning is bad for everyone, including white people. That's why some of us resist pushback, all while trying to break free from our own conditioned biases. Yes. And Bridget says, yes, she did think it was a joke about male genocide. Yeah, you remember that? Remember, I will never forget Sunny D. Holy shit, she said to us on the panel, I don't understand. Why do you have a problem with black male baby genocide? Trolling or not, the disengagement with what is inappropriate, what is antisocial, what is psychopathic, and not socially okay, that line just got moved and moved and moved and moved way the fuck down. Way the fuck down. By people who would say, well, that none of this actually matters, except for the fact that...
If you can't stop talking, this is something I'm speaking to out of my soul, out of my humanity, and I don't debate my humanity with most people. I'm having this conversation with you all because I think it's important for this platform, and for people of color who want to be on this platform and see this kind of toxic behavior and say, fuck it, I'm never going to go near that. That's why I'm having this conversation with you all, and for no other reason. You might be able to shout me down. You all might be able to talk over me. You might even be able to possibly win this argument in the eyes of your viewers. But you know what you're saying to everybody else who would want to be a part of this and have conversations and build communities here and possibly build movements? You say to them, you're not welcome. That's why it makes me upset that we're having this conversation. That's why Cole cashed out like that.
Cole cashed out because he's a fucking bitch, dude. Don't act like he was taking some.
So
fucking
now, once again,
Alright, bro.
Scream over the reality, because fact might make you a bad person.
To pretend and to assume that you were dealing essentially with something exotic, bizarre, and practically, according to human laws, unknown. Alas, that is not true. We are also mercenaries, dictators, murderers.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Liars. We are human too. What is crucial here? Unless we can manage to
That's to be expected, Bridget. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that.
Between
Bridget says she saw in the news that more adoptions are taking place since the ban of abortions. I would hope that that would be the option, because
the American dream, and those other people who have not achieved it,
or back in '63, actually,
we will be in terrible trouble. I want to say at the end, the last, is that is what concerns me most. We are sitting in this room, and we are all, at least we like to think we are, relatively civilized. And we can talk to each other at least on certain levels. So that we could walk out of here assuming that the measure of our enlightenment, or at least our politeness, has some effect on the world. It may not.
It does.
I remember, for example...
I want to say, the prophetic value of what he just says right there cannot be underestimated. It shocked me when I heard it last night. He is literally saying, if we don't keep our discourse open, conscientious, considerate, empathetic, then we might see a future where that's not possible to even occur.
We civilized, and we can talk to each other. Those other people who have not achieved it, we will be in terrible trouble. I want to say at the end, the last, is that is what concerns me most. We are sitting in this room, and we are all, at least we like to think we are, relatively civilized, and we can talk to each other at least on certain levels. So that we could walk out of here assuming
I'm pro bodily autonomy.
The measure of our enlightenment, or at least our politeness, has some effect on the world. It may not. I remember, for example, when the ex-Attorney General, Mr. Robert Kennedy.
No, that's, I'm going to stop for a second. Sonny D, Alba says, and I concur. That's why I'm reading this, actually. Sonny D was an inhumane conversation. Yes. And that was crazy. It was insane. Sonny D was an inhuman conversation with absolute monster. Kill all black babies. Yes, so that's what she said. She actually said kill all black male babies, if I remember right. Like in biblical, a king say, time slay all the firstborn. Yeah, that's basically what she was talking about. She may have been trolling us, but it doesn't matter. Civilized conversation. I mean, well, look, we can have colorful, inflammatory, civilized conversation, but we can't have debased, disenfranchising, disregarding, dismissive conversation. That doesn't help anybody. Once again, the same.
If you can't stop talking, this is something I'm speaking to out of my soul, out of my humanity, and I don't debate my humanity with most people. I'm having this conversation with you all because I think it's important for this platform and for people of color who want to be on this platform and see this kind of toxic behavior and say, "Fuck it, I'm never gonna go near that." That's why I'm having this conversation with you all, and for no other reason. You might be able to shout me down. You all might be able to talk over me. You might even be able to possibly win this argument in the eyes of your viewers. But you know what you're saying to everybody else who would want to be a part of this and have conversations and build communities here and possibly build movements? You say to them, you're not welcome. That's why it makes me upset that we're having this conversation. That's why Cole cashed out like that.
Yep.
Cole cashed out because he's a fucking bitch, dude. Don't act like he was taking some fucking high ground on some moral bullshit.
All right, bro. Said that it was conceivable that in 40 years in America we might have a Negro president.
He was right.
And that sounded like a very
just a little past
statement,
40.
I suppose, to white people. They were not in Harlem.
It's pretty amazing
when the
how
statement
accurate
was
he
first
actually
heard.
was.
And did not hear, and possibly will never hear, the laughter and the bitterness and the scorn with which the statement was greeted. From the point of view of the man in the Harlem barbershop, Bobby Kennedy only got here yesterday. And now he's already on his way to the presidency. We've been here for 400 years, and now he tells us that maybe in 40 years, if you're good, we may let you become president.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
What is dangerous here is the turning away from anything any white American says. The reason for the political hesitation and in spite of the Johnson landslide is the one has been betrayed by American politicians for so long. And I am a grown man, and perhaps I can be reasoned with. I certainly hope I can be. But I don't know, and neither does Martin Luther King. None of us know how to deal with those other people whom the white world has so long ignored, who don't believe anything the white world says, and don't entirely believe anything I or Martin say. And
he's talking about the disenfranchised amongst
years.
his own constituency.
It seems to me that the city of New York, for example, this is my last point, which had Negroes in it for a very long time. If the city of New York were able, as it has indeed been able, in the last 15 years to reconstruct itself.
New York has had
tear down buildings
freed
and rape
black people
new ones.
and slaves and
downtown and for money.
Africans.
And has done nothing whatever except build
Since
housing
its
projects
inception as
in
New
the ghetto
Amsterdam, by the way.
for the Negroes.
That's hundreds of years.
And of course the Negroes hate it. Presently the property does indeed deteriorate because the children cannot bear it. They want to get out of the ghetto. If the American pretensions were based on more solid, a more honest assessment of life and of themselves, it would not mean for Negroes, when someone says urban renewal, that Negroes simply are going to be thrown out into the streets, which is what it does mean now. This is not an act of God. We're dealing with a society made
Are you
and
hearing the
ruled by
same
men.
language, yet not the same approach? Because that's what I heard. I'm hearing the same exact conversation we're literally having right now. 60 years later, because this is 1963. So 60 years later, we're still having a very similar conversation. In spite of how the media and social media look, I think and hope truly equality is coming soon, Emily says. I think we are doing better than they want us to think. I agree. I think that socially we are becoming more and more equal and more egalitarian, and what we're actually seeing is the clawing, the scratching of tiny demonic little ghouls getting shoved down the drain. And so they're clawing at the sides of the drain, knowing that their day is coming to an end. But because we move forward, they act in fear, and that could be a very dangerous thing to have a dangerous animal in a corner. So, of course, they're going to be violently rejecting anything that comes out and disregarding and essentially revisiting, revising, and reiterating any practice, behavior, ideology, or history that they think supports bad behavior. And we see that. But Baldwin really was looking in the future. Second Emily, yes. Thank you, Second Emily. I appreciate it, Second Emily and First Emily. That's, now that I know that everybody's cheating, I'm like, fuck. I mean, it's good. I feel like I should open up like 12 pages and just go hog wild. But I'm not going to do that. You guys can do whatever you want. I'm not saying you can't, because you won't get in trouble for it. I would. Yeah. Craziness. Anyhow. Where are we? James was making his last point. Mr. Baldwin.
If the American Negro had not been present in America, I am convinced that the history of the American labor movement would be much more edifying than it is. It is a terrible thing for an entire people to surrender to the notion that 1/9 of its population is beneath them. And until that moment, until the moment comes when we, the American people, are able to accept the fact that I have to accept, for example, that my ancestors are both white and black, that on that continent we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other.
Well, thank you for keeping me in your ear. I appreciate you for that, Emily.
Of America. I'm not an object of
Second Emily, I'm sorry.
charity.
Second Emily.
I am one of the people who built the country. Until this moment, there is scarcely any hope for the American dream, because the people who are denied participation in it,
you would think that the IP would
by their
matter.
very presence,
I don't believe it does.
will wreck it. And if that happens, it's a very grave moment for the West.
You can experiment yourself. I don't have, a ton of viewers but you'd be able to tell the difference right away. I know that they're having I played with it on Kick, and sure enough, on Kick, you get 1.7. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's run that back because his ending is fantastic. His closing is just supreme. And Love Supreme, I believe, I could be wrong, is a Baldwin poem? Anyways, I could be getting that wrong, but I'll have to look at that up.
Charity. I am one of the people who built the country. Until this moment, there is scarcely any hope for the American dream, because the people who are denied participation in it, by their very presence, will wreck it. And if that happens, it's a very grave moment for the West. Thank you.
He said, one more time, let's hear what he said. He said that there's some folks we should be paying attention to, or else they're going to fuck it up.
Who built the country. Until this moment, there is scarcely any hope for the American dream, because the people who are denied participation in it, by their very presence, will wreck it. And if that happens, it's a very grave moment for the West. Thank you.
In other words, if a person doesn't know how to handle the situation, they haven't been shown or cared for or empathetically reached out to or compassionately reached out to or allowed to take part in the conversation enough to acclimate to it, they might have a violent and or disrespectful response. And Abba says, that's why I support Mike and you, Aaron, because it's complete truth with receipts, records, and unedited video evidence you both are sharing. I try, I do my best. I can assure you I have my biases in the matter. I believe in civil rights. I believe in equality. I believe that humans are humans. And I also believe that there are people that would undermine your well-being just for a bag, for a couple of letters and some sewing, and they don't even know the difference as if it's a knockoff or the real thing, even if they walked into the store. These people would shill to you so that they can feel more important, and most of the time they're just looking for negative attention. They aren't sure of themselves, but they would have you believe they are, and they never have the graciousness or the sense of themselves to say, yeah, I don't know, I mean, it's possible, could be wrong. But when they do, it's generally then backed up with I mean, I could be wrong. I do that as well, but then I back it up. I believe I back it up. I try best I can with some evidence or associations or storyline or even anecdote that points to why I would think that. And then I may even open up to, could be wrong. We'll find out. But in this case, it's hard to say that Mr. Baldwin wasn't wrong.
Hold on, bro.
Let me get this out.
No. Oh, he's trying to finish the fuck up, dude, and then I'm gonna pass it off to my other bro. All right, go ahead.
I just want to know.
Pass it off to his other bro.
That when you're challenged like this, you fucking start yelling.
Oh God, no! I'm fucking done with this, dude. Quarantine. Are you gonna start talking about souls and non?
I just want to honestly,
Quarantine.
Hold on.
Gonna talk about souls and nonsense.
He's trying to finish the fuck up, dude, and then I'm gonna pass it off to my other bro. All right, go ahead.
I just want to know what is missing in your soul that when you're challenged like this, you fucking start yelling.
Oh God, no! I'm fucking done with this, dude. Quarantine. Are you gonna start talking about souls and non? Like spiritual bullshit. I'm done talking about irrelevant. I don't want to kind of irrelevant. Go ahead, dude. You have authority. I can try to talk to you like 5 times.
The reason why Destiny's fucking targeting Cole is because he's the weak link there, and he's already emotional about the subject. And if you're emotional about a subject, which is understandable for him to be emotional on, you've already lost the battle in the eyes of like all of these fucking out of touch, nihilistic internet debate edgelords. Okay, that's the reality. It is what it is. So that's why MONWEDFRIM is trying to move away and like bring on relevant in the conversation. And that's why Destiny's attacking him way more than attacking Quarantine. But even when he does attack Quarantine, he attacks him from the point of view of like, oh, you don't have anything to teach me. Like
Quarantine is actually a professor.
Forget is this is literally Destiny defending his use of the N-word. Okay.
Like this.
Let me play this one more time because I want people to catch up on how important this moment is. I don't agree with Hassan very often. But this is why Destiny hates Hassan, is because in one fell swoop, Hassan negated the whole topic that basically this guy was using. And not only that, But he proved that Destiny was in bad faith. And did it repeatedly, ad nauseum. And the big spoiler, Hassan has been hated by Destiny ever since. Literally, you can find videos of him talking shit about him from last week, saying it was this and that or any other reason. But, you know, when you admit you're wrong, you show other people that you are the bigger person. And so we should just call Des Tiny that. He's tiny. It's a tiny spirit, tiny soul. And what really hurt him here was that his soul was addressed to start with.
Hold on, bro.
And he couldn't even talk about that because
he's trying to finish the fuck up,
he's
and then I'm gonna pass
dehumanized
it off to
the
my other
entire
bro. All right,
concept.
go ahead.
I just want to know what is missing in your soul that when you're challenged like this, you fucking
He
start
thinks
yelling.
it's funny.
Oh, God, no, I'm fucking done with this, dude. Cormentine, are you gonna start talking about
souls and non?
And his sycophants support him because they think it's funny too. The discourse cut off.
The reason why Destiny's fucking targeting Cole is
by
because
cynicism.
he's the weak link there, and he's already emotional about the subject, and if you're emotional about a subject, which is understandable for him to be emotional on,
Yes,
you've already
sometimes
lost the
it's just
battle
for
in
fun.
the eyes of like all
I
of
think
these
so,
fucking
too.
out of touch, nihilistic internet debate edgelords. Okay, that's the reality. It is what it is. So that's why Mindwave's trying to move away and
Hey,
like
look, the
bring
dancing
on
cow.
the conversation. And that's why Destiny's attacking him way more than attacking Cormentine. But
like-
even
looks
when
like
he
the
does
dancing
attack
cow is
Cormentine,
giving this
he
information.
attacks him from the point of view of like, oh, you don't have anything to teach me. Like ultimately, what we shouldn't forget is this is literally Destiny defending his use of the N-word. Okay.
It's literally Destiny defending his use of the N-word. Once again, this is found in the Hard R Truth, the Destiny N-word documentary, 2.5 hours long. There's so much in it that I just haven't even gotten around to, folks, that would shock your spirits. And, yeah, don't even know how to describe it beyond that, actually. There's so much that you've seen and so much you haven't in it. I mean, yeah, 5-hour video, and you only saw the first quarter. Wow. Let's hear from Mr. Buckley now. We're in the second half, and it's important to remember Mr. Buckley. Well, he is the quintessential conservative of the time period, and still reflects his actions and behaviors. And the New Republic, his magazine, still reflects in our society to this day as the example. And what we see is Proud Boys, Goipers, right-wingers, MAGA hat wearers, QAnon lovers. All of it comes from and is associated directly to, in the modern day, the person you're about to see take the stage. And some of what he says might shock your senses as well as shock you at how it doesn't really sound so much like a conservative as a bigoted liberal. Because a bigoted liberal, not Democrat, but capitalist. These are things to keep in mind. And I say this to bias the conversation, to point out something about this, because the comprehensive capability to understand who and what these people are, because he makes political references in the time, and I'll stop it when it comes up. It's important to know who these people are. It's important to know what they stood for and where these ideas and ideologies and dialectics come from now. And you know what? I could be much bigger about this. I could be really, like, in frame with you now. I think it's important that we don't forget these people. We don't forget what they stood for. We don't forget what they said. We don't forget how they behaved. Because even though this person was in no way, shape, or form agreeing with Mr. Baldwin, they couldn't help but capitulate certain facets of moral prudence. The ability to say, look, morally, I can't disagree with these points because you're human. But I can politically and financially X, Y, and Z. There's a different thing there when you state your premise and then follow it up with the anecdote, the belief, the empathetic connection, the fact, the association, the storyline, and then the summary, which we will now give the floor to William F. Buckley.
tremendously moving moment now. The whole of the Union standing and applauding this magnificent speech of James Baldwin. Never seen this happen before in the Union in all the years that I have known it. Baldwin is smiling, obviously delighted by his reception, tremendously moved by it.
I am now very grateful and very pleased to be able to call on Mr. William F. Buckley, Jr. to speak forth to this motion.
Now we have Mr. William Buckley, who will need all his skill to establish ascendancy over his audience.
Okay, did you hear what he just said? He's going to need all his skill to gather the ascendance over the audience. What he's saying is, this guy's going to need everything in his fucking back pocket to get the audience to capitulate or to believe him and to follow along because of the power of the prose presented before them by Mr. Baldwin. In other words, how do you follow Mr. Baldwin's speech? And why would he say this? Well, because Mr. Baldwin presented an argument that surmised everything a person who had experienced life as a black person, life as a person repressed, life as an intellectual repressed, life as someone who is compassionate and reasoning and considerate about others, including those who might not understand, who might fight back. He included everybody in his concept. He got rid of his notes and he spoke extemporaneously. Many levels of jazz happened right there. And the audience was well aware that it was, because they gave it the grace in the room to be that. They weren't all waiting to speak. They were listening to everything he had to say. And that is the key to what I'm talking about and exposing today. That the audience was willing to listen. And this is where we're losing some of the battle, is that attention spans and ADHD and the capitulation to laziness and thought is defended with a troll. Bad behavior, defending bad behavior. And that's where we just need to start ignoring it altogether, because they're looking for attention. The moment you see it, just boot it. Now, in some cases, we should be giving a handout and saying, hey, look, do you need a friend? Do you need somebody to show you another way? Do you want a way out of that maze that you're picking up that Michael's bedazzled poopy that you just shot into the pan that looks golden, but that's just a fucking veneer. And now you're throwing it at your neighbor through a mental prison that doesn't fucking exist except in your own mind. Look, you're living in your own hell because you created it. Step right on out. It's imaginary. Come on. Baldwin was talking about this. Baldwin made his point to show that this is what we might fear in the future. Not autocracy, but ourselves not allowing the interaction, the interpersonal engagement, the allowance for others' breadth and width of intellectual and emotional intelligence. And please do press and like the. Yes, Bridget, I know you hate my comparison, but it is that shock value that gets people to remember that that's what they're doing. Proudly so. And it's the most base, stupid human thing. But they would, still do it. Proudly so. And I'm not going to talk about it as if it's a good thing. No, I got to point it out because I'm not going to ignore it. And I don't think any of us should. That's just like ignoring when you got a baby with a diaper that's full and everybody's just letting it run around at the party. You're like, Mom, somebody, Dad, Mom, somebody, anybody? Yeah. Well, when they're adults running around with a diaper full. Woo! Whoa. Whoa, that's whoa and gross, both at the same time. So yeah, no, yuck. Yuck, all the way yuck.
Clearly has been so deeply moved.
Thank you, Mr.
By the
President.
eloquence and personal experience.
Ladies and gentlemen, Billy Buckley.
Haycock.
Junior.
Gentlemen. It seems to me that of all the indictments Mr. Baldwin has made of America, here tonight and in his copious literature of protest, the one that is most striking involves, in effect, the refusal of the American community to treat him other than as a Negro. The American community has refused to do this. The American community, almost everywhere he goes, treats him with the kind of unction.
So he's started
the
to
kind
talk
of
about
satisfaction.
Baldwin as a person.
And posturing carefully for his
responses to him, as opposed to the topic, straight away. And I want to point this out, that this is exactly the fey that folks do nowadays. Producer hanging out, by the way. The disassociation to make the person the topic instead of the topic the idea to be debated. Now, that would make sense if we are talking about the person as the topic. It would make sense if we were pointing out a person's behavior specifically, or their disingenuousness, or their contradictions, or their hypocrisies, or their false statements, or their slandering, or their bullying, or their abuse of platforms. I mean, you name it. Then we would be talking about a person. But we're talking about a specific topic right now. So, why did Buckley go here? Well, because Baldwin caught him off guard. Turns out, Buckley was tired. He'd gotten off a plane, had a lot of jet lag. And so, when I said he was tired earlier, I meant, no, historically, we know now. He was very tired, and he had written a bunch of notes, and all his notes were thrown right out the window. All his debate points were lost. Everything that he thought he was going to debate against was gone. And we see it right here. You can see it in his face, like, I'm talking about the man now. Damn. You know, like, he knows he's lost. Before he's even started, it's really kind of an amazing thing. Now that I've read about it all, and you know, it's quite fascinating what was going down with these men. And I would share the complete footage. But it's like 3.5 hours long. And by the way, Baldwin, and I'll say this again, and Buckley do have a very fascinating conversation that can't be heard. Where Baldwin seems very much like he wants to talk with Buckley, and Buckley doesn't seem very interested. A lot of mirrors in time and history and characters. Because I'd compare William F. Buckley to Destiny. And yes, James Baldwin to Trihex. There's a lot of interesting similarities. If just not convenient to the conversation, but anecdotally. I mean, there's no relationship, there's no business, but the parallels, kind of hard to miss. Timing-wise, language-wise, interest-wise, and how one speaks prose and the other, well, let me let Mr. Buckley speak for himself.
Quite properly, commands the American community has refused to do this. The American community, almost everywhere he goes, treats him with the kind of unction, the kind of satisfaction,
at posturing carefully for his flagellations of our civilization, that indeed, quite properly, commands the contempt which he so eloquently showers upon us.
By the way, you hear the dialectic?
It is impossible, in my judgment, to deal with the indictment of Mr. Baldwin unless one is prepared to deal with him as a white man.
Whoa.
Unless one is prepared to say
Baldwin wrote later that when he heard that he should be dealt with a white man, he said, can he tell his bank manager that? I wish he would tell my bank manager that. Fucking A, Baldwin. Amazing minds. Just incredible minds. But the shock on Baldwin's face. Look, I love how expressive he is in this moment, especially because we needed that. We needed to understand what he was thinking without him saying it. Yes, at the time period, it did seem like divine intervention, didn't it? Well, to some degree. It had been leading up to this. And mind you, he was probably in his 16th or 17th book by that time. He was a world-famous novelist. He had written philosophy, he had written history, he'd written, novels, poetry, prose. William Baldwin was possibly one of the most popular writers of the time. So it makes sense that he would have been invited to something like this, but the serendipity or the perfection of having, or the simplistic historic value of having the person who coined conservatism arguing with the man who helped define what the problem in interpersonal and communication issues between the parties of the time and the era. It is hard to underestimate. Yeah, it's hard to underestimate, and divine it is. I think this will be looked at for quite some time, and I don't want it to be forgotten because it's so palpably important.
Is utterly irrelevant to the arguments that you raise. The fact that you sit here, as is your rhetorical device, and lay the entire weight of the Negro ordeal on your own shoulders.
Oh, hold on a second.
By the way, it is impossible, in my judgment,
his elocution is pretty
to deal with the
fantastic.
indictment of Mr. Baldwin unless one is prepared to deal with him as a white man. Unless one is prepared to say to him, the fact that your skin is black is utterly irrelevant to the arguments that you raise. The fact that you sit here, as is your
from the concept,
and lay the entire weight of the Negro ordeal on your own shoulders is irrelevant to the argument that we are here to discuss. The gravamen of Mr. Baldwin's charges against America are not so much that our civilization has failed him and his people, that our ideals are insufficient, but that we have no ideals. That our ideals rather are some sort of a superficial coating which we come up with at any given moment in order to justify whatever commercial and noxious experiment we are engaged in. Thus, Mr. Baldwin can write his book, The Fire Next Time, in which he threatens America. He didn't, in writing that book, speak with the British accent that he used exclusively tonight, in which he threatened America with the necessity for us to jettison.
By the way, did you hear what just happened there? That is a British way of saying, at the time period, bullshit. Because the truth is now you're hearing a part of the prepared speech. He expected Baldwin to speak with a mid-Atlantic accent, which Baldwin picked up, or a Mid-Eastern. And this was a stylized way of speaking at the time period. So it is being used against him and is a racist move right here. That's why the audience responded. Because they were well aware that what he was intimating is that somehow we should be incensed the black man be using a white Anglo-Saxon elocution? That the way he spoke should have sounded, I guess, more black? That's what he's saying. He's just saying it with a dialectic that makes it sound, oh, so flowery.
And in order to justify what...
Because his superfluous lingo allows for his duplicitous falderall to be nothing less than bullshittery. Yes.
Whatever commercial and noxious experiment we are engaged in. Thus, Mr. Baldwin can write his book,
They
The
sure
Fire
did.
Next
I think we
Time,
should as well.
in which he threatens America. He didn't, in writing that book, speak with the British accent
the horror in his
used
face.
exclusively tonight. In which he threatened America with the necessity for us to jettison our entire civilization. The only thing that the white man has that the Negro should want, he said, is power. And he is treated from coast to coast in the United States with a kind of
Buckley doesn't choose to give way. The interrupter must, and he has done. The interrupter now said that.
Goes beyond anything.
Yes, get him his Grey Poupon. You remember that?
Servile Negro creature by a Bridget. I propose to pay him the honor this night.
You just aged yourself.
Saying to him, Mr. Baldwin,
you and I are the same age.
I am going to speak to you without any reference whatever to those surrounding protections which you are used to in virtue of the fact that you are a Negro. And here we need to ask the question, what in fact shall we do about it, Mr.
But by the way, he's speaking very eloquently and very verbosely and lugubriously. And I want to point out that what he just said is because of his position, he is assuming that Baldwin has never actually experienced the things that he says he's experienced, and that because he is, quote unquote, I'm going to use the term Negro in his own words, that he is a privileged sort and has been protected from those experiences. And the audience, you can see, you just look at the faces in the audience, they're like, what? Because, by the way, just James Baldwin's story is not one of protection at all. Like, that poor guy had trouble after trouble. He left the U.S.
What shall we in America try to do, for instance, to eliminate those psychic humiliations which I join Mr. Baldwin in believing are the very worst aspects of this discrimination? You found it a source of considerable mirth to laugh away the statistics of my colleague, Mr. Murford. I don't think they are insignificant. They are certainly not insignificant in a world which attaches a considerable importance to material progress. It is, in fact, the case that 7/10 of the white income of the United States is equal to the income that is made by the average Negro. I don't think this is an irrelevant statistic, ladies and gentlemen. It takes a capitalization of $15,000, $16,000, $17,000 per
So
job
what he's
in the United
comparing
States. This is a capitalization
right now is
that was
this
not
is something that you might have heard
exclusively
somebody else we
as a result
know
of
do, which is to
travail.
compare. Well, your wages are the same as their wages, and leaving out a whole bunch of information like the fact that the cost of living and the subsidized healthcare and the socialized lifestyle of the British citizen at the time period was incredibly low cost, especially after World War II for the following 20 years. There's a lot more than that. But a pound went a hell of a lot further than a dollar. And that's just one example, by the way. So let's let Baldwin finish. Sorry.
My great-grandparents worked too. Presumably yours worked also. I don't know of anything that has ever been created without the expense of something. All of you who vote for a diploma here are going to do that at the expense of a considerable amount of effort. And I would thank you, please not to belie the fact that a considerable amount of effort went into the production of a...
By the way, you don't recognize her, but that right there, which you just missed, by the way, very famous. She passed away a couple years ago. She was in the White House till she was a little old lady. This is, I can't remember her name. I wish I had known.
By the average
very
people. I don't
famous
think this is an
reporter
irrelevant statistic, ladies and gentlemen.
was on CNN.
It takes a capitalization of $15,000, $16,000, $17,000 per job in the United States. This is a capitalization
look at the body language of the
that was not created exclusively as a result of Negro travail. My great-grandparents worked too. Presumably yours worked also. I don't know of anything that has ever been created without the expense of something. All of you who hope for a diploma here are going to do that at the expense of a considerable amount of effort. And
So
I
he's
would
comparing
thank
the
you,
expense of
please
a
not
diploma to
belie,
slavery,
the
which is
fact
why
that
they're
a
laughing. There she
considerable
is.
amount of effort went
I wish I could
into
remember her
the
name.
production of a system which
was
grants
in the
a
White House
greater
press room.
degree of material well-being to the American Negro than that is enjoyed by 95% of the other peoples of the human race. But even so, to the extent that your withering laughter suggested here that you found this a contemptible observation, I agree. I don't think it matters that there are 35 millionaires among the Negro community. If there were 20 million millionaires among the Negro community of the United States, I would still agree with you that we have a dastardly situation. But I'm asking you not to make politics as the crow flies, to use the fleeted phrase of Professor Oakeshott, but rather to consider what, in fact, is it that we Americans ought to do? What are your instructions that I'm to take back to the United States, my friend? I want to know what it is that we should do, and especially I want to know whether it is time, in fact, to abandon...
Hold on, I would look it up, but all my devices are doing something. Not Margaret Mead. She was in the White House press room, or the press corps, working for CNN in the end. And it was 3 or 4 years ago she passed away. And she was there until she was an old lady, basically, in the front row, asking questions. And there she is as a young lady in 1963. I just think it's amazing when you see like a reporter in the midst of things. It's like, oh wow, look at her.
The American dream, as it has been defined by Mr. Haycock, Mr. Burford. What, in fact, is it that we ought to do, for instance, to avoid two humiliations mentioned by Mr. Baldwin as being a part of his own experience during his lifetime. At the age of 12, you will find on reading his book, he trespassed outside the ghetto of Harlem and was taken by the scruff of the neck by a policeman on 42nd Street and Madison Avenue and said, "Here, you nigger, go back to where you belong." 15, 20 years later, he goes in and asks for a Scotch whiskey at the airport at Chicago and is told by the white barman that he is obviously underage and under the circumstances cannot be served. I know from your faces that you share with me the feeling of compassion and the feeling of outrage that this kind of thing should have happened. What, in fact,
they're laughing
do
because they know that he's just like Destiny, been known to drop the N-bomb and to dislike black people and to not believe that, and he was arguing at the time, the civil rights was an abuse of privilege. So that's
what in fact are we going to do to this bomb, and how are we going to avoid the kind of humiliations that are perpetually visited on members of a minority race? Obviously, the first element is concern. We've got to care that it happens. We have got to do what we can to change the warp and woof of moral thought in society in such fashion as to try to make it happen less and less. Let me urge this point to you, which I can do with authority, my friends, the only thing that I can tonight. And that is to tell you that in the United States, there is a concern for the Negro problem. Now, if you get up to me and say...
And they're laughing at him because
if you get up to me and say, well, now, is there the kind of concern that we students of Cambridge would show if the problem were our own?
Helen Thomas, that's right.
That's
Helen Thomas. Thank you.
May very well be that there has been some sort of a sunburst of moral enlightenment that has hit this community, so as to make it predictable that if you were the governors of the United States, the situation would change overnight. I'm prepared to grant this as a form of courtesy, Mr. President. But meanwhile, I am saying to you that the engines of concern in the United States are working. The presence of Mr. Baldwin here tonight is in part a reflection of that concern. You cannot go to a university in the United States,
So what he's trying to do, by the way, there is to say that we shouldn't be concerned because, of course, Baldwin is an example of how we are concerned. Baldwin is showing up here. We're letting him speak. What?
Presumably
Cynicism?
also governed by the Lord's spiritual, as you are, in which Mr. Baldwin is not the toast of the town. You cannot go to a university of the United States in which practically all other problems of public policy are preempted by the primary policy of concern for the Negro. I challenge you to name me another civilization, anytime, anywhere in the history of the world, in which the problems of a minority, which have been showing considerable material and political advancement, is as much a subject of dramatic concern as it is in the United States. Let me just say finally, ladies and gentlemen, this. There is no instant cure for the race problem in America. And anybody who tells you that there is a charlatan and ultimately a boring man.
So,
boring precisely,
what is your point,
because
William?
he is then
Mr.
speaking in
Buckley?
the kind of abstractions that do not relate to the human experience.
Yeah, right.
The trouble in America where the Negro community is concerned is a very complicated one. I urge those of you who have
So he's kind of trying to say that it can't be dealt with.
ideologized interest in the problem, to read the book Beyond the Melting Pot by Professor Glaser, also co-author of The Lonely Crowd, a prominent Jewish intellectual, who points to the fact that...
I just wanted to point out the contextual leveraging there. This is a tactic that conservatives still do. Well, because somebody Jewish says this, it must be. But let's pawn the idea off to people that we're going to later on say, maybe I don't like. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Oh, the Jewish wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It's a dog whistle. It's just a very fancy dog whistle. Because, by the way, anti-Semitism was very big at the time. It really hasn't. Things haven't changed that much
in America,
frankly,
where the
which is why we got to
concerned is
keep pushing the conversation.
Complex as a result of an unfortunate conjunction of two factors. One is the dreadful efforts to perpetuate discrimination by many individual American citizens as a result of their lack of that final and ultimate concern which some people are truly trying to agitate. The other is as a result of the failure of the Negro community itself to make certain exertions which were made by other minority groups during the American experience. If you can stand a statistic not of my own making, let me give you one which Professor Glaser considers
So why should
relevant.
they have it any better than the
He
other
says,
minorities?
for instance, in 1900, there were 3,500 Negro doctors in America. In 1960, there were 3,900, an increase in 400. Is this because there were no opportunities, as has been suggested by Mr. Haycock and also by Mr.
No, because
Baldwin
the education,
implicitly?
well, yeah, no opportunities,
says
less
Professor Glaser.
opportunities.
There are a great many medical schools who are by no means practice discrimination, who are anxious to receive and to train Negro doctors. There are scholarships available to put them through, but in fact that
Anecdotal at best,
particular
but
energy,
untrue.
which he remarks was so noticeable in the Jewish community and to a certain and lesser extent in the Italian-Irish community, for some reason
doesn't
is
relate
not there.
to a community
We
that
should
was
focus
exposed to
on
slavery,
the
by the way.
necessity to animate this particular energy, but he comes to the conclusion, which strikes me as plausible, that the people who can best do it, who can do it most effectively, are Negroes themselves. Let me conclude by reminding you, ladies and gentlemen, that where the Negro is concerned, the danger, as far as I can see at this moment, is that they will seek to reach out for some sort of radical solutions on the basis of which the true problem
fear what they might do.
They have done a great deal.
Because we might figure out something for them, but
of white discrimination against Negroes. They have done a great deal to agitate a moral concern, but where, in fact, do they go now? They seem to be slipping, if you will read carefully, for instance, the words of Mr. Bayard Rustin, towards some sort of a Procrustean formulation which ends up less urging the advancement of the Negro than the regression of the white people. 14
so what he's
times
saying
as many
is
people in New York City
black people are going to bring down white people
as of whites. This
rather
is a
than bringing
How shall we
themselves
address it?
up.
By seeking out laws that encourage
very fancy
illegitimacy
language,
in white people. This, unfortunately, tends to be the rhetorical momentum that some of their arguments are taking.
One thing you might do, Mr. Buckley, is let them vote in Mississippi.
I agree. I agree.
And by the way, that is called an interjection. Now, did you notice how he didn't say, let me finish, let me finish, let me finish, I was talking! You notice how he didn't do that? Because that interjection was logical to the false premise he was making. And by the way, you notice what he didn't do in this whole situation? He didn't keep to his premise. He has been harping on one subject and its tenets, meaning its arms, its concepts from that one subject. And it isn't being supported with fact. Though it does have the anecdote, and it does have the empathetic response, this is more an explanation of, you okay? You okay, Mr. Producer? Okay. Yeah, it's more an implication of what he's projecting, what his concerns are, and what he's saying white America's concerns are in how black people are responding. So this is fascinating on a number of levels. And Alba says, true, Aaron, anti-Semitism, nothing has changed, my friend, or racism towards foundational black Americans. So extremely sad. Yes, and we have a chance to keep moving these conversations forward. Then they clearly creep. We have gone somewhere, but still, the fact that we're having very similar conversations and very similar responses to those conversations is what we should be concerned about. And where we have certain people dragging us back in those conversations and ignoring the history as if it didn't exist. That's what I think we should be highly concerned about.
I couldn't agree with you more, and for...
Amen. Let them vote in Mississippi.
Except, lest I appear too ingratiating, which is hardly my objective here tonight. I think actually...
In other words, he's saying, I don't want to be simping.
Is not that not enough Negroes are voting, but that too many white people are voting.
So he realized he's already lost, so he might as well play yes and.
Booker T. Washington said...
He's very smart.
Booker T. Washington said that the important thing where Negroes are concerned is not that they hold public office, but that they be prepared to hold public office. Not that they vote, but that they be prepared to vote. What are we going to do with the Negroes, having taught the Negroes in Mississippi to despise Barnett, Ross Barnett? Shall we then teach them to emulate their cousins in Harlem and adore Adam Clayton Powell?
Oh, if we don't know who to make show them as an example. I can't do
if I were myself a constituent of the community of Mississippi at this moment, what I would do is vote to lift the standards of the vote so as to disqualify 65% of the white people who are presently voting. Not simply to give the... I say then that what we need is a considerable amount of frankness that acknowledges that there are two sets of difficulties. The difficulties of the white person who acts as white people and brown people and black people do all over the world to protect their own vested interests, who have, as all of the races in the entire world have, and suffer from a kind of a racial narcissism which tends always to convert every contingency into such a way as to maximize their own power. That, yes, we must do. But we must also reach through to the Negro people and tell them that their best chances are in a mobile society. And the most mobile society in the world today, my friends, is the United States of America. The most mobile society of the United States in the world is the United States of America, and it is.
So you see what I was talking about earlier, where he pivots to capitalism? So he's not pointing out democracy. He's not taking part or engaging in the conversation. And you can hear the rustling in the room as they become uncomfortable with his meandering reasoning. And it's important to note that it sounds cogent. It sounds eloquent. But the premise wasn't followed up with just an anecdote and then facts and a summary. No, my friends, it was premise, idea, pivot, concept, logic, reaction to the room, capitulation. He didn't engage because he couldn't. He had lost from the moment he started. And he knew it. So he tried to, let's call it flim-flam, glam the audience. And he realized it wasn't working, and his final pivot was to take the other person's logic and try to play into that, to at least win with some members of his audience, let's say compassionately. And we shall see this come to fruition.
Mobility, which will give opportunities to the Negroes, which they must be encouraged to take. But they must not, in the course of their ordeal, be encouraged to adopt the kind of cynicism, the kind of despair, the kind of iconoclasm that is urged upon them by Mr. Baldwin in his recent works. Because of one thing,
oh, you're
I
good.
can
I hope
tell
your
you,
mom
I
is doing
believe
well.
with absolute authority that where the United States
Don't
is
forget, you can always
concerned,
play back.
if it ever becomes a confrontation between a continuation of our own sort of idealism, the private stock of which, granted, like most people in the world, we tend to lavish only every now and then on public enterprises, reserving it so often for our own irritations and pleasures. But the fundamental friend of the Negro people in the United States is the good nature, and is the generosity, and is the good wishes, is the decency, the fundamental decency that do lie at the reserves of the...
Hold on, bro.
Let me get this out. Let me get this out.
Oh, he's trying to finish the fuck up, dude, and then I'm gonna pass it off to my other bro. All right, go ahead.
I just want to know what is missing in your soul that when you're challenged like this, you fucking start yelling. What's wrong with you?
Oh, no, I'm fucking done with this, dude. Cormentine, are you gonna start talking about
souls and non like spiritual bullshit? I'm done talking about I don't want to kind of irrelevant. Go ahead, dude. You got the floor, dude. I can try to pass it to you like 5 times.
The reason why Destiny's fucking targeting Cole is because he's the weak link there, and he's already emotional about the subject, and if you're emotional about a subject, which is understandable for him to be emotional on,
Spousal rape was a thing, but you already started off on the wrong foot.
When you say something to me like, why not?
Pivot.
Do you want me to answer the question, or you
The
just
problem
want
is
to
you
talk
don't
over
answer. The problem is you pivot like crazy because you can't just give like a simple.
Because these are not
Gaslight.
simple questions, and that's
Okay,
the thing.
cool.
Mirror.
That's your problem, though. You take very complex social issues and you want to smash them down
I
to little tiny
absolutely
sound
do
bites.
not do
Minimize
that, and I'm
it.
insulted that you even.
But you're literally doing it to me right now.
The problem is what
Denial.
you're doing is you cannot answer a single
Okay.
question to save your life. You have to pivot 15 different times. That's why when he asked you
Mirroring.
about whether or not it was okay for somebody to do something, your response was, "Well, I question the white man that would even consider doing that." Like
Disassociation and
it doesn't matter. It's not
disengagement.
relevant to ask. So I will ask it again, and I'll see if I can get one answer without a 15-minute speech. Tell me why you think it's okay
Shame
for somebody
and
to
insult.
engage in rape play, where there has been a history of oppression of men over women, and there continues to be to this day.
Non sequitur.
It's not okay to engage in race play.
When they've lost, they change topic or they try to take their opponent's topic. And that is the similarity I found. An amazing similarity between a person who was only a couple years ago considered a very extreme conservative, who is now a blue-haired liberal with blue hair in tow. Seems pretty convenient, right? Even though the language, the behavior, the ideologies, they haven't changed much, if at all. He was arguing with Nazis then. It's just now, it seems less, I guess, convenient when he's using the N-bomb. And, yes, and Poo-Poo Sauce says, I'm sorry, let me say the full name, Poo-Poo Sauce Albo Grande! When prisoners segregate by race in the prison systems, you know little has changed. Yeah, and I actually read an incredible study that took about 20 years on that subject, a Princeton study that suggested that that wasn't accidental, that is both social and also a manner of facilitating that. So it's both system and capitulation to system, and that these things, when they do actually desegregate that, tend to lower people's sentences, which is, you know, it's a whole topic we can go over at some point. Actually, it's I'd love to look at that. That's a long-term topic right there, isn't it? Yeah, it's still segregation. Self-segregation is very much a thing among society as well. People still do it for comfort and for all sorts of reasons. When it's forced, though, by redlining and taxation or ghettoizing, building shtetl, whatever you want to call it, then it's clearly systemic and not individuals choosing to stay close to a cultural identity. Very different, very different. Yeah! Anyways. What was this? Oh, yeah.
People. These must not be laughed at.
Ask you a question.
That's
when
what I thought. I'm not answering shit.
No. Let me ask you. Do you want the answer or not? You want the answer or not?
So he doesn't want to engage in the conversation.
I'm not going to play fucking games.
Yeah, he is playing games. That is what he just did is a game.
To try and come to a common understanding.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
But I'm not here to argue this with you. If you can't stop talking, this is something I'm speaking to out of my soul, out of my humanity, and I don't debate my humanity with most people. I'm having this conversation with you all because I think it's
just to have
important
peace
for this platform, and for people of color who want to be on this platform and see this kind of toxic behavior and say, "Fuck it, I'm never going to go near that." That's why I'm having this conversation with you all, and for no other reason. You might be able to shout me down. You all might be able to talk over me. You might even be able to possibly win this argument in the eyes of your viewers. But you know what you're saying to everybody else who would want to be a part of this and have conversations and build communities here and possibly build movements? You say to them, you're not welcome. That's why it makes me upset that we're having this conversation. That's why Cole cashed out like that.
Of the Negro people in the United States is the good nature. And is the generosity and is the good wishes, is the decency, the fundamental decency,
the fundamental decency
at the reserves of the spirit of the American people. These must not be laughed at.
Do you think that still exists?
And under no circumstances must they be laughed at, and under no circumstances must America be addressed and told that the only alternative to the status quo is to overthrow
and that lack of sensitivity, that should also be a sign.
The faith of our fathers, the faith indeed of your fathers. This is what must animate whatever.
It could be because, you know, in California here, not only did most of us grow up in an environment where we were bussed around, and I grew up in a very intermixed place where there's lots of folks coming from everywhere, as well as this was a Mexican territory, as well as Chinese have been here since the 1700s, essentially, and Native and Thai and the Japanese people and the Vietnamese people who came and the Ethiopians and the Israeli and the Chilean and the, melting pot stuff all across California. So it tends to be more inclusive. Now, a lot of people don't understand that part of the problematic issues with California is that the majority of the state is farmland and desert. And in those areas where the smaller populations are, they are extremely, extremely right-wing. And so in the state that everybody would claim is just all blue, no, you may not understand the state completely. This is a dichotomous place where people are just more free to be them. That's why you also find the wildest people up in Oregon, because as people cross the country in general, and now still the same, people seek at the edges for more freedom. Now, if you want more conservative behavior, just go to where puritanical thought rules, and that would be in the East, because that's where the colonies are. And if you want to seek refuge from that, which is what the country was started on, by the way, just as a reminder, you go farther west. So you're always going to have more ideological extremism, and you're going to have people expressing it. And in California, you have the most populous state that is number 5 in the world for income and outflow. And we're the size of a country, and we have the income and outflow of a country. So the rest of the nation literally couldn't survive without us. That's a taxable fact. So that's something to keep in mind. So the worst, but the amalgamation of everything. So it tends to threaten those more monolithic states who, of course, when you have mostly a white population or a mostly native population, or once again, mostly a Christian or Mormon population, or you have a monolithic population, it promotes xenophobia, lack of health, lack of diversity, lack of education, lack of everything. That's why places like Mississippi, who are very segregated, it comes in like 48th or something in education. And Utah is 37th. You know, California isn't very much better either. But none of us are very good in the nation because our education system is failing us anyways. That's separate. That's failing everybody. I would argue that we are all in the position of failing because our communication is that we capitulate to the easiest and laziest thought and the shortest line of reasoning. And that's not reasoning at all. That's just lazy. It's not healthy for us. It's not healthy for us to not give each other the room to have the jazz or the blues or to play the lick, you know? And you can even play a couple of questionable notes in there too, because everybody's fallible. There's possibility of mistakes on everybody's part, but that's how we grow. And there is no perfection, especially amongst those who don't have a background in any of that. It's one thing when you hear it coming from William F. Buckley. This is a person who took part in policy. This is a person who took part in think tanks. They weren't playing video games. As much as they regulate what is taught, it should be better. Bridget Moten says, and I agree 100%, that is a big fucking deal.
Because if it does finally come to a confrontation, a radical confrontation between giving up what we understand to be the best features of the American way of life, which at that level is indistinguishable so far as I can see from the European way of life, then we will fight the issue. And we will fight the issue not only in the Cambridge Union, but we will fight it as you were once recently called to do on beaches and on hills and on mountains and on landing grounds.
Basically
and
saying, we're going to fight a race war.
That just as you won the war against a particular threat to civilization, you were nevertheless waging a war in favor of and for the benefit of Germans, your own enemies, just as we are convinced that if it should ever come to that kind of a confrontation, our own determination to win the struggle will be a determination to wage a war not only for whites, but also for Negroes.
So in other words, he capitulated and tried to turn to the side of his opponent. He failed. And now we hear the results, ladies and gentlemen. That's right, there's instant results. How is there instant results?
Will the tellers take their places, please? They voted in favor of the motion being that the American dream is at the expense of the Negro. They voted in favor of that motion 544 persons and against 164 persons. The motion is therefore carried by 380 votes.
Baldwin
and declare
wins
the
the
House to
debate.
stand adjourned.
It's agreed by the majority of the parties that the premise that the American dream was had on the backs of black Americans, well, their premise they believe to be true. And that changed the conversation in the United States for up until now. Because that is where the world took note. Right here, in this man's words. On that evening, it changed the future of the civil rights movement. It brought to the world's attention that there was more than just a conversation between the states, that the people's humanity was had, that had been taken from them and used against them, was an abuse of the American dream. And as you can tell, that was important to everybody. Why? Because the American dream meant the future. And that future has been disturbed by what? Exactly? Bear with me, folks. I'd have to say that
You just called somebody the N-word because he cannon rushed you in a game
this
of StarCraft at 5
kind
a.m.
of conversation
before school,
being
okay? That's
proliferated
fine. I like slurs.
is what causes
That doesn't mean you
this.
shouldn't say it, okay? Slurs are fun.
The problems
N-word,
of the now.
W-word, G-word, whatever you want to say, fucking knock yourself out.
The undermining
But
of all
Karen
the
is
work
just
done.
like Gusano, just like whatever
the
the fuck else you
undermining
want
of
to
the
say.
jazz,
Karen is undone,
the
cracker,
ability
whatever.
to play a
Karen
lick,
is
to be heard,
absolutely a slur for white woman. Bellevue
to
Hospital
confuse
put
the
her on
subject,
administrative leave,
to
pending a
hypocritically
review of the
and
situation.
cynically deny the truth.
Better
of the
hope
facts
you don't
of
have
the
a
current
they-them
day.
reviewing the fucking case.
To deny that we've
'cause
come
if
so far,
you're out of here.
and to so
keep in
simply
mind when they say
ignore
black in the
how
media,
far
that's
we
with
came.
a capital B. Please don't get offended, okay? We literally refer to black people with capital letters, like fucking Jesus Christ himself, okay? Don't forget. You joking? No, in the New York Times style guide,
They would
black is
deny how
supposed to
far
be
we came
capitalized. You don't do
to
it
take
with white
advantage
people.
of
I'm
how
not making
far
this
back
up.
they want
This
us
is
to
the
be.
style guide. White,
While
white,
acting as though
white woman is in
they're
lowercase.
liberal.
Black men, the B is capitalized.
Does this sound
I'm
liberal?
not joking. I don't make this shit up, okay?
Does it sound-
It's clown world.
It's exactly the type of behavior
Does it sound like
that
it's
has
not
endangered
bigoted
so
or
many
racist?
black men
You tell
in the
me.
past.
Who is this happening to now? Okay? And if you say Emmett Till, then delete yourself. Do you know the biggest threat is to black men's safety in the United States? It's not white women, it's other fucking black men. Do we need to bring the racism back? Do we need the racism wars? Like, it... And they're
Essentially,
even showing this lady.
Destiny is William F. Buckley without tact or the language.
Did the race wars begin and I like missed the calling card for it? I just want one white
Tucker
person
Carlson with a
in
video
one of these
game.
videos to just catch up. Yeah,
Dismantling
it was a crazy N-word in the park,
quality
you know? What was I supposed to do? Just casually drop it
interactions
and see what people say. Like,
intellectual communication
because she's white.
because
and she thinks
everybody
that's
around him
obvious in
wants
this
to be
America
like
that
him
we all live in.
or appease him like a cult.
this is the most I don't even want to say it. I can't
But
even
more
say go. You
importantly,
can't
this
even
is
say
what's
go back
drawing
to
us
Africa
back
because that doesn't
backwards.
work.
This is
because
one
Africans
example.
fucking
There's
hate
many of them, but
African-Americans.
This
Miss
is an
me with
easy
that-
example to
miss
point
me
out.
with that fucking. This is the America we live in shit. Get the fuck out of here. Leave. Just go somewhere else. Oh,
Apparently, this is the America we live in. Destiny.
I was just thinking of this woman.
Oh, you're
Stephen
gonna show
Bennell,
the dog.
Stephen
You're
Kemmeth
gonna show
Bennell
the
II.
dog. You're gonna show the dog video that everybody got mad at because they didn't get the full story on this one either. By the way,
Oh, yeah,
if you
'cause they
saw
didn't
this
get the
video, you
full
thought it was just a crazy
story.
white woman being a crazy white woman.
Because that's
she
what's
was being
important in
about
this.
40% crazy.
Just 40%.
But what you didn't see in this video
How do we
was when the black
normalize
guy posted the video on Facebook,
this
he even wrote in the comments,
from-
I told this white woman I was going to offer her dog treats.
How do we
to abduct the
normalize
fucking
that
dog.
from this?
In February 2021, charges against Amy Cooper were dropped after she completed a
that.
5-session educational and therapeutic program focused on racial identity.
Spiritual.
Like,
as
how do you
are,
not cope?
in which Mr. Baldwin is not the toast of the town. You cannot go to a university of the United States in which practically all other problems of public policy are preempted by the primary policy of concern for the Negro.
Huh. Familiar language, just a little fancier, doesn't it sound? And let me bring it back to one last comparison, sorry, because I think it's very important.
Of a racial narcissism, which tends always to convert every contingency into such a way as to maximize their own power. That, yes, we must do. But we must also reach through to the Negro people and tell them that their best chances are in a mobile society. And the most mobile society in the world today, my friends, is the United States of America.
Of this one.
Oh, you're gonna show the dog! You're gonna show the dog! You're gonna show the dog video that everybody got mad at because they didn't get the full story on this one either? By the way, if you saw this video and you thought it was just a crazy white woman being a crazy white woman, she was being about 40% crazy. But what you didn't see in this video was when the black guy posted the video on Facebook, he even wrote in the comments, I told this white woman I was gonna offer her dog treats to abduct her fucking dog. In February 2021, charges against Amy Cooper were dropped after she completed a 5 black. And you thought, oh, Karen is absolutely a slur for white woman. Bellevue Hospital put her on administrative leave pending a review of the situation. Better hope you don't have a they-them reviewing the fucking case, because if so, you're out of here. Oh, keep in mind, when they say black in the media, that's with a capital B. Please don't get offended, okay? We literally refer to black people with capital white slur. That doesn't mean you shouldn't say it, okay? Slurs are fun. N-word, W-word, G-word, whatever you want to say, fucking knock yourself out. But Karen is, just like Gusano, just like whatever the fuck else you want to say, Karen is cracker, whatever. Karen is absolutely a slur for white woman. Bellevue Hospital put her on administrative leave pending a review of the situation. Better hope you don't have a they-them reviewing.
The reality is, what we're looking at
He's trying to finish the fuck up, dude.
is a degradation of the communication,
My other bro, all right, go ahead.
a loss of
I just wanna
engagement,
know what is missing in your soul.
a
That
loss
when
of
you're
soul.
challenged like this, you fucking start yelling. What's wrong with you?
Oh, no, I'm fucking done
And
with
that's a
this.
problem.
Quarantine, are you
Because
gonna
we,
start talking about-
as a republic, as a people, as humans, we need to be able to communicate clearly.
The reason why Destiny's fucking targeting Cole is because he's the weak link there, and he's going to.
Come on into the
he's
corner.
already emotional about
Let's
the
take
subject,
it-
and if you're emotional,
let's take
about
this
a
moment
subject,
together
it's
before we head
understandable for
out.
him to be emotional on.
Come on.
You've already lost the battle in the eyes of like all of
Hold
these
on.
fucking out of touch,
Sorry.
nihilistic internet debate edgelords. Okay, that's the reality. It is what it is. So that's why Mindwave's trying to move away and
you
like
can't handle
bring
the
on relevant in
conversation,
the
then you should've
conversation.
just-
And that's why Destiny's attacking him
What
way
did we
more than
learn
attacking
today?
Quarantine. But even
Well,
when
we
he does
learned
attack
that
Quarantine, he attacks him from the point of view
debate
of like, oh,
style,
you don't have anything to
language,
teach me.
and grace.
The most mobile society in the United
grace of the
States
time
and in the
period.
world is the United States of America, and it is precisely that mobility which will give opportunities to the Negroes which they must be encouraged to take.
That graciousness that is lost in our communication or ability to listen to one another at length so that we can understand a point that isn't summarized into a quip or a quote or something that you can then text someone quickly. That's a problem, and that's something we need to address. Especially when it comes to bisexual blue hair beta simp is afraid of LGBTQ canceling his cause. Interesting. He said that. Yes, yeah, that it is. That's one of the greatest because there's a lot out there of him early on that he's wiped away of him dropping the F-bomb. You know, he used to love to use that instead of retarded. So that's a thing too. Yeah, he's concerned about it, that somebody's going to find the videos. And I know where they are. We gotta go way back, though. We gotta go way back. There's machines for that shit. Anyways, dropping crumbs just like that, dude. Anyways, except I actually wear a fucking button down. Anyway. I mean, you'd think the dude would have some fancier clothing. That's out of his own mouth. That in his lifestyle. Yeah, absolutely. No, he's deathly afraid that people are gonna find out the truth about him and be very upset. But I'm not going to talk about his personal life that way. I've already shared what I publicly know. Anyhow, what else we learned? Well, we learned that Abba was here and Poo Poo Sauce Abba Gonder was here and Bridget Moten was here. Thank you, Bridget Moten, the main mod. And who else was here? Well, Emily was here, and second Emily was here. Abba was here, and Who else? Well, Lita Caproni, the only, one and only official, unofficial, but totally official sidekick and co-host. This is the absolute truth, and thank you for joining. And I'm sure there was more than that. I remember there was somebody else back in here, hiding back in the midst, and I apologize. I didn't get you a mod because you didn't take part for long enough, but let's see, Poo-Poo Sauce. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. That would be, and I'm going to add as a moderator, add as a standard mod to something music too. And yes, congratulations and welcome to the party. You are now a standard mod. Everybody's a standard mod because that way you can't get kicked out of chat, and also you can at the head mod in charge. Head mod in charge, Bridget Moulton! That's right. I try. Yes, indeed. And so anyhow, what else did we learn today? Oh, we learned that locution, language, and the interests of graciousness, much less the audience participation or allowance for language to move in a creative way. Move in an inspirational way, to be moved by the words. This has been lost. I would say almost completely. We still have a string we can hold on to pull back on. I think we can get it back. I don't think it's impossible. I think we have to just give it the space and tell the kids to give it space. And I think the rubber band of space that they're going to seek, wondering why they're missing something. Well, that's going to be it. That's going to be the rubber band back. They're going to want to give into this, and I think they're going to find people like Kerouac and Kesey and Burroughs and Yeats and all those folks of the of that time period, the beatniks, and they're going to give into the prose of Howell. And they're going to read Steinbeck, and they're going to go back and revisit all these things that they were too smug to pay attention to because they thought they knew better, realizing that all of these issues were dealt with in Catcher in the Rye, 1984, Brave New World, Tommy Knockers, for God's sakes. Stand By Me. That the problems of our era, they've been spoken about by many, and specifically very specifically
for the every stick and stone and every face is white, and since you have not yet seen a mirror, you suppose that you are too. It comes as a great shock around the age of 5 or 6 or 7 to discover that the flag to which you have pledged allegiance, along with everybody else, has not pledged allegiance to you.
That we've come so far as to forget this capability, this expression, this appreciation for the brain and the eloquence and the creativity. We're losing that, but we still have a string. So what else did we learn? We learned that it's possible to be creative and give grace and to move an audience without making them angry, but to inspire them to be better. And I think that's the most important lesson of the day, that we've lost the gift of inspiration and we've given way to argument and screaming and pounding one's fist on the table as an excuse to win. And frankly, that's what we're going to work against. That winning, rather than inspiring, rather than extending the compassion, extending the empathy, extending the humanism, and allowing for that humanism. Instead of doing that, we watch an entire set of debate brah fuck it up for the rest of us. So I'm going to reject that, and I think you should too. I'm going to urge you to. You don't have to, but don't give into it. Point it out where you see it. Don't get caught up in their flippant language, and keep talking. Keep expressing until you're done. Make your point, summarize, wrap it up. But if someone tells you to land the plane, tell them to go fucking pull their own tongue. Just like they do whatever sexual organ they have. The lost art of communication is had in true debate, not argument. And that's where I'm going to leave it today. Thank you so much for being here. I'm aronmsound. If you like the show, make sure to subscribe up there with the button, or down there now. It used to be up there. You can like too. Please like, because that puts me on the algo. And as you well know, the algo's all fucked. And subscribe. Hit the button. Be like bling, 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 bling. And make sure to hit the notifications. Let me know if they're sending them to you, because that way we all have we have something to say if they aren't. So yes, I appreciate you. Also, I do take donations for the local volunteer daycare. And speaking of which, they've been having some issues, by the way. I haven't heard back from them, but I went to go drop off the loot, actually. I was making the video, and it was closed up, and I'm kind of bummed. So I've gotten in contact with them to find out when they're going to be open again, when someone will be there, so I can actually make a whole deal. I told them what I'm doing, that kind of stuff. But I am still taking donations, because I haven't gotten a chance to go over there. And that's in the tip. I also, you can feed me, you can send me socks. Somebody just sent me some coffee, which is awesome. I don't get paid for this. I don't make any money off this. So trinkets are fun, and I appreciate them. And at some point, I am looking for an outside sponsor. So meaning like an actual advertiser or sponsor or something of that nature that doesn't have anything to do with YouTube, because YouTube ain't gonna support this shit. You know that. Anyhow, that's enough of my salesmanship. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you giving the pros and the jazz. And that's a terrible, hold on a second. I'm always giving people their terrible freeze faces. That's close. Okay. Thank you so much, Poo Poo Sauce. I appreciate you so much for that. I'm going to start doing this for at least the next month. I have a whole series of these shows planned about the modern conversation, about the comparative to proper debate, some of the greatest debates in humankind. Next week, Hitchens versus McCullens, and the topic is God. The world's greatest atheist versus the world's most prominent Catholic school theologian. This is pretty amazing stuff. But that's a long one. That's why I gotta keep cutting that one, because it's so fucking long. It's so involved, it's hard to choose, and there's so many great, juicy, incredible moments. There's like 10 minutes in the center everybody uses, but there's so much else in there. Anyways, it's about the communication, folks, and we're losing it, and that's why I'm so glad you could be here for it. Thank you for sharing it, and do spread it in the world. Spread the love, and don't forget, at the end of the day, all I can ask you folks is that you remind everybody that we're living in a mental prison that we keep ourselves in, that we can free ourselves from. And the prisons that exist, if they aren't had by actual bars and breaking the law, well then they're freeable by just stepping outside of your normal practices and looking for something different and seeking something healthier in you. And that can mean many things. But it can also mean that at the end of the day, all we can ask, all we can hope for each other, is that when you see someone heading towards trouble, when you see them locking themselves in the mental prison, when you see someone saying, hey man, let me tell you and sell you some bullshit. Well man, the only thing I can ask of any of you at all, and you can say it with me now, you know what I'm about to say. The only thing I suggest that we all scream out together. Look out! thanks so much for being here. I appreciate you at all times, and thank you for listening. It means a lot that you spend your time with me and that you choose to be here. You're all very wonderful folks, and I hope you carry that out in the world. And I hope that somebody does for you what you do for others when you tell them not to forget, at the end of the day, look up.